bling as it pops up.
Well, you got a blue light that says on air over there.
Yeah, I do have that one. It's the wrong color though. But yeah, it should come on and wire it in so I start recording. Everyone will see that come on. They'll just freeze.
Yeah, you could have it like just outside the door for coming into the studio.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Just like they do like in the newsrooms on air.
Yeah. Well, we can get set it right up like that, all techie.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back. When were you here last? It was last May, episode 44.
Was it in May? It could have been.
I believe so. I think it was maybe a little bit later. It's been about a year since.
Yeah, I remember because we were talking and we were talking about how long it had been since we were in Ottawa together.
That's right.
And Burns like, yeah, it was like, or maybe you or Burns said, yeah, it's been about a month or so or 6 weeks. And it was like, actually, no.
A couple months.
It's been like 3 months just about, or like 2.5 months. Like, okay, yeah, that's right.
So that'd be about right. I think it was about February.
Yeah,
March,
we
April,
left
May. So
yeah, that'd be right. Yeah, I guess it was May.
Yeah.
So it's been just about a year.
So what have you been up to since then? Like you're actually, I should set the stage a little bit. You're probably one of the most, I got to, I guess, get to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously over the convoy. And then I find out that you've got like a rock star lifestyle.
Oh, man.
I cannot believe some of the stuff that you've been able to actually experience.
Star, yeah, someone's idea of a rock star and maybe other people's idea of a nightmare. I haven't figured it out yet, but
yeah, well,
it's busy.
It's a hell of a ride.
It is. That's I've lived a couple lifetimes already in 36, and I feel like I'm 136 some days.
You know what though? I think those experiences are something to build on.
Yeah.
I think without the pressure, you don't have the ability to grow. So
yeah,
the fact that you've had such a wild range from bodybuilding to martial arts, hunting, and some of the trips that you've been able to take are pretty wild.
Yeah, it's been a pretty sweet ride so far. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, it's one of those things. Like all my friends have always said that know me well. They're like, yeah, if you ever get into a car wreck or something happens to you at a young age, like anyone who really knows you well shouldn't really mourn that hard. You lived a couple lifetimes already. Like. Yeah.
Have you been able to capture some of those moments that would be able to kind of reflect a little bit of some of those moments of accomplishments and maybe the investment that it took to get to them in all the different levels?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like for me, like for the martial arts, probably like my first win in the ring was probably like one where I felt like, having my family there, my brothers was there, and my mom and dad they didn't want to watch in person, but I didn't really understand why they didn't want to watch in person, because they were literally on the phone the whole time with, while I was like in the cage, and they were like on speakerphone with, I think like, actually it was like my mom and dad, like their high school, or not high school, but like childhood best friends. So they were there watching, and I called them aunt and uncle, even though they weren't, but whatever. It's because my mom and dad were best friends of them since, I was pretty well born or whatever. So they're watching, and they're on speakerphone with my mom and dad, giving them a play-by-play. My brothers are there. I'm competing in the cage. And, but yet they couldn't watch it in person.
Well, it's probably a lot like, looking, through your fingers. The scary part on a movie, you can't quite watch, but every now and then you can't help but take a little glimpse.
That's right. I guess they probably it was like I say, it was my first competition, and like maybe they didn't want to watch me get mauled or something. Yeah. I guess I can relate now. Like I have a daughter too, and hopefully she never gets into martial arts, but I couldn't imagine watching her, I guess, either. If she started losing, I'd be... Someone better hold me back. I'm going to climb the cage.
Well, I think the letting him kind of go and experience all of that, because the pressure is something that you got to learn how to deal with. But then from a parental side of things, that's harder on the parents a lot of times than it is on the kids. Yeah. No, so I think that was like one moment I'll definitely remember is my first win in the cage for sure. My brothers, they blew over the sides of the cage and picked me up, and my one brother was so excited. He grabbed me by the waist and picked me up straight up in the air, and there wasn't much clearance above the cage. And I ended up when
you know, because he grabbed me by the waist and he picks me straight up. So now my head's like 9 feet in the air and like smashed my head off the lights above the cage.
Holy shit.
He was so excited. I was like, my head. I took more damage, I think, from that than
the celebration than the actual scrap. Well, the cage, like what kind of fighting are you talking about here?
I competed in martial arts. So sometimes it was just like boxing ropes. It was like a boxing ring. And then other times it was full on octagon, and it was
like MMA.
MMA, yeah.
So what was the foundation? What was your
the first
craft?
The first it was, I guess, kickboxing and freestyle. Yeah, a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I was training under a guy that's passed now, is Ray Hose, at the Host Kickboxing in Dawson Creek.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I trained with him with some kickboxing, and then the Brazilian jiu-jitsu was just, I knew we had a mutual friend that was really, really good at the time, lived around Dawson. So, I trained a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu with him, and then with Ray, with kickboxing. And then outside of that, it was just, I don't know, two older brothers and just taking beatings my whole life. And so I kind of had
trying out whatever you learn.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Picked up some moves on the playground.
So how old are you? You were still living at home?
So,
what age?
Yeah, I started training, I don't know, I was about 13, 14. And then I had my first competition when I was 19 in Dawson. There was just a local thing came to town. It was like, so you think you can fight, or so you think you're tough, or some kind of weird.
Yeah, I remember actually a few of those.
Yeah, so then they used to have them in the old Night Riders bar. So, that was my first one. I went in, Ray's like, you want to go in this thing? And I was like, yeah, I do. So let's go. I'm like, how bad am I going to get beat up? He's like, you'll be all right. So I'm like, well, whatever. I'll try it in front of a home crowd. And you want to talk about butterflies, buddy.
Oh, I bet.
Oh man. I remember I had my socks on and my shoes walking from the back, and I just had my shorts on, no shirt. And I walk up to the side of the cage, or actually, no, that was ropes. So I guess I walk up beside the ring. And I remember I went to take my shoes off and take my socks off, and my feet were so sweaty. Mental image, gross. But my sock slid off my foot.
Oh, man.
I wouldn't have to pull it off. It was oh. I was like, oh my, I am so nervous right now. And the bell went off, bing, like that. And I mean, go square off with this dude. And this guy, I think he was 11-0 or something. I don't know. And I was like, this is my first fight.
Oh man.
And I'd scrapped lots, street fighting and stuff that you shouldn't be doing, and over the years, but I'd never been in a cage or a ring and not had a reason, what I mean? It's like you
needed some kind of motivation.
Yeah, I had no more. I'm like, why am I going to punch this guy in the face again? He hasn't done nothing to me. And then
definitely.
Yeah, I mean, literally, he lit me up the whole first round. I mean,
and so he gave you some motivation.
Oh, buddy, yeah. I was lit up like a Ukrainian Christmas tree, buddy.
Really?
I was getting and then I went back to my corner, and between rounds, my brothers are just like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Did you break your hand or something? You're not swinging. And I'm just like, it just kind of snapped. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, they're like, he's going to get you knocked out, man. You're going to get knocked out here. I'm like, yeah, I probably am. I think I've swung 3 times in 3 minutes, And yeah, I come out of my corner after the 1 minute break between rounds, and something I realized maybe that I needed to do something, so.
Well, there is a lot to be said when you're fighting. I think the brain goes into a methodical pattern of survival. So if you go in there with no idea, you don't know the fighter, you haven't done any preparation, and then now the adrenaline hits. If you don't have something it's like the training, and that's why it's got so much value in it, is because there's a little bit of muscle memory and a little bit of a default sense of self-defense through the training.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like what you were talking about was that you're in the moment, and there was no game plan or ability to be able to recognize how to engage proper. It was just pure survival. And once you got that out, it was just like, okay, I got all that shit out of there.
Yeah.
Put it all back into place, and now you can engage. And
I think a part of it was my one of my trainers, Ray, was there, and he said to me just spar with him, even just get into spar, because we spar lots. So I went out there, and I had also the motivation of not wanting to get knocked out after. I felt I feel like I'm losing this fight, and I got definitely reassured by both my brothers that I was getting the shit kicked out of me. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I thought too. And then I went out, and I was able to put my tools together and put them to work, and
Did you know who who you're going to be fighting beforehand?
Yeah, so it was kind of a bit of like a loose operation. So we found out about 3 or 4 hours beforehand. And the guy was from Fort Nelson. I think that guy was from Fort Nelson. I don't even remember his name, but yeah, I mean, so I didn't know like what his strengths and weaknesses were. Nothing about him, right? It wasn't like he was like local guy to Fort St. John, Dawson Creek, or Grand Prairie, and I could talk to Ray and we could ask around and be like, yeah, that guy's like a striker, this guy's a kicker, he's
got good ground game.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just like, I don't know. I mean, like he looks like he's one of those guys who's like really angry, like steroid rage. So I'm like, I imagine most guys like that just want to swing for the fences, and he did. I mean, he lit me up like a punching bag, and I mean, it was kind of to my advantage, to be honest with you, because he did come out aggressive. Like I thought like he might, and he ended up. I think he was pretty winded, to be honest with you. And then between him being kind of half winded and me putting my game plan together for the second round, he didn't. I think we got about, I don't know, a minute and a half in, and he was on the ground, and I had mounted him, and he turned to give me his back like in a panic to turtle, and I just slipped him in the rear naked and
nice
sunk it in, and that was it for him. And that was my first competition, and
fuck yeah,
choked him out. Yeah, so I felt good.
And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of
that was the beginning.
The career? Was that a career?
It was like, I don't know if you want to call it a career. I mean, I'm probably if you take about all the expenses out of it for traveling around, and then you take all the prize money, I probably still went negative. It's like guys going to Vegas and then like, I won $2,000. Like, yeah, we spent $5,000. So did you really win? But I fought 7 times, and never lost. So.
Well, what got you into that to begin with?
Man, I was like an angry kid, I guess. I don't know.
Was it?
Let's like fighting. Looking back now, I ain't proud of it, but I used to park in front of the bar in front of Night Riders, not being legal drinking age yet. I'd be 17 years old, and I'd wait for the bar to close. And then everyone would come out, and, that was just, they called it Night Fighters. It was a nickname because it was just a scrabby bar. And I'd be out there in my truck, 17 years old, grade 11 or whatever. These guys would all come out drunk and wanting to fight, and I'd just get out of my truck because I wasn't legal drinking age, go in the bar, and guys would be on the sidewalk and just looking at you funny, like, you want to go? And like, those poor buggers are probably, you know what I mean? They got like 20 ounces of liquor in them. They can't see straight. And I'm like sitting there stone, stark sober. Yeah, let's do this. It's just like, it was my own little cage, I guess. I don't know.
Man, that is awesome.
Yeah.
It's common. Nothing to be proud of, but reflecting back on it, it kind of formed a little bit of your...
I can laugh about it now. It's 20 years ago.
Exactly. So there's a difference, though, when you're training versus just street fighting.
Yeah. Oh, that's,
so what is that element? Like, what the toughest guy on the street versus maybe a guy that's, not really seasoned, but has a pretty good understanding of how to work the ring, and has a little bit of a understanding of not only where their own strengths and weaknesses are, but how they can use that when they're engaging somebody that's just using anger as the fuel and motivation to engage. So what's such a big difference?
It's just like, apples and oranges. It really is. You learn so much. It's mostly just to not be brawly, like you can get caught up in it still. I see lots of guys, and I trained with lots of guys that would kick the living shit out of me, in a sanctioned fight. But I've seen them same guys go into a sanctioned fight and they lost their cool and they started brawling with a guy that is only a brawler, doesn't train, and they got knocked the fuck out because they didn't stick to their game plan. You train to fight smart. Mm-hmm. Anybody can fight, but can you fight smart? That's the difference. And some guys can fight really good that have never trained, but they can't fight smart. When you're educating yourself, right?
When you're talking about fighting smart, is that the ability to have the presence of mind and spatial awareness to be able to understand body position and openings into moves that you've already learned, and 100%. Now you're able to kind of maneuver around?
Absolutely. It's all education. It really is. Like when you're training and you're learning how to, martial arts, whether it's, kickboxing or boxing or jiu-jitsu or whatever it is, it's all education. So 100%, it's just like, your stance, like your striking distance, and like when you are on offense and when you're on proper defense. Because I mean, I could have the best left hook in the game, but if I don't have proper defense and I get clipped, well, it doesn't matter how good your left or your right is when you're sleeping on the sidewalk. I mean, it's all education. So yeah, I mean, like to answer your question, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's apples and oranges, different.
Well, what happens when you're in that moment though, and now you're in a position of defense, or maybe even you've taken a hit that's kind of either winded you or phased you in a way where now you can't have the sense of awareness or control to be able to react proper. How do you manage a situation like that?
So that'll come down to, I guess, like two things. That's going to be discipline, and that's just something that's in you. And B is going back to your training again. So if you get clipped, you can't snap like I was talking, like some of the guys did, and they start brawling, because then your defense has gone from low to worse. So you need to use your education to stay collected, and you'll gain your composure again, but you just need to keep your feet moving, keep moving in the cage, and things will come back. Anyone that's been knocked out or near knocked out, it's not like you stay like that forever. I mean, it comes back. It just depends on, your body makeup, and again, your conditioning. If your conditioning is really good, your cardio is good, your strength is good, your diet is good, your body is a machine, right? It'll come back. So, and again, it goes back to your education of training on what you do. So you get clipped and you're clipped. Don't go into like this, what's the word I'm going for? Like just like into like on attack mode. Like, I think it's like a human instinct, like if you get hit hard, you go
fight or flight has,
fight or flight.
I think you need to, and I think this is where I've heard a lot of people talking about when they're training, and why you see so many injuries that are actually a lot more severe in training than you do in the ring, is because they're pushing the boundaries so that you know how to be able to react in those situations. They'll go out and they'll throw a 5K run in there, enter already fatigued, and so they can hit the limit a little bit prematurely and give the advantage to the person they're sparring with, and then be able to figure out in the moment of absolute fatigue how to manage the fight or
100%.
flight, keep the brain focused, and the ability to, I think, understand when to give up, which isn't really giving up, but that threshold can be a little bit of a finite, I think, decision.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a judgment call in the moment.
It is, and I mean, it's funny. I mean, the way you talk about it, it's like you've been there, because you're hitting the nail on the head. I mean, it's just, you're going to take yourself to the limit, and then you're going to see, after that, that's when you find out who you are and what you're made of.
It's humbling, isn't it? The first few times.
Oh, I mean,
I know I've been humbled.
I've been humbled. I mean, I've been rocked pretty good before, and it's just like, thankfully, it was enough training and discipline not from my own. I've always surrounded myself with great people, and I had good trainers and great trainers, and I mean, I got clipped lots. I've been in, the same dude that I choked out in the first competition that I did. He had me, like seeing stars. I got saved by the bell. I mean, he was choking me out, and I literally was like, bing, bing, bing. I got saved by the bell. I mean, I was like, my vision was narrowing. I mean, I was toast, which is also why it felt really good to choke him out, because it wasn't like, you go into any fighter, even a guy who's like a jiu-jitsu guy, or, who's into, really tying you up and choking you out. Whenever they talk about going into a fight in a UFC or whatever organization you're following, they're like, I'm gonna knock that guy out. The goal is always to win by knockout. So with me during that fight, when that guy like pretty well had choked me out, I got saved by the bell. That's all it was. I wasn't gonna tap out. So when I got a hold of his neck, it wasn't like I was thinking, let's stand up again, because I was boxing him, like I was beating him bad, but I didn't want to knock him out no more. I'm like, I wanted to give him taste his own medicine. So yeah.
So when you're in a moment like that, and you said you had his neck, there's certain maneuvers where it feels good, everything's in position, and you don't have a position pretty much squared away. You just know it's happening because of the feeling and the ability to be able to have that control and be able to manipulate that situation into where it's going to be a final moment. Now, has there been a time where you've been in that position and you're pretty much, that's it, and someone was able to kind of get out of that?
I don't think I've had anyone
Because that would be
No, I've never
the
had
ultimate
anyone-
mental game,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
I
I
don't
mean,
think I've
way to
anyone
crush
slip out of
somebody.
her. Yeah, that was, yeah. I
Like-
mean, I honestly don't, no, I never had anyone in checkmate and them get out of it. No, I never did. I think, I mean, a part of it, like I was saying, it's all education and training, but another aspect of it is also still like, it's instinctive too, right? I mean, you look at all the guys in the UFC, they all, you know, that's, you know, supposedly the top of the top when it comes to martial arts. Well, you can train like crazy and it's gonna 100%, it's gonna, you know, be a part of your success. But all those guys were naturally instinctive or gifted with fighting of some sort. Otherwise, they wouldn't get that level. But it's just like, so some people are naturally good at certain things. And I think that if you're able to beat your craft on that and train, and it's already your natural instinct, that's when you get your elite guys. You get like George St. Pierre's and John Jones and all these type guys. It's because they're naturally gifted, and they were, you know, they have an insane discipline when it comes to training. But I think when those two things collide, when you have exceptional training and you also have that natural gift, and you happen to find the natural gift, or I mean, everyone has natural gift in this world. It doesn't matter who you are. Everyone has a certain natural gift, or more than one natural gift. And if you're able to pinpoint that, and you're able to train on that and make that your craft and beat that craft, that is when you
That's where the two
great.
lines kind of come together.
Exactly. And that is where you become, you know, an exceptional at whatever it is, whether it's an athlete or it's, you know, doing podcast, or if it's, you know, doing computer stuff. I don't know. I'm not a computer guy, but I mean, everyone I think has a natural gift, and it's really cool when people are able to harness it and they figure out what their natural gift is, and then they actually work.
Well, what is that saying? I wish I knew. Sometimes I wish I knew sayings. It's almost like a joke, right? You know, a joke, but you can't remember them all the time. But I think what I'm curious about is there's some people that say that there is a limitation to talent, but there's no limitation to training.
No.
And so you can have all the talent in the world, but nothing's gonna beat the training and the ability to be able to grind it out. So I guess to what you're saying, you know, you combine the two of them, and that's a bit of a rarity as far as where is that ceiling really, of that threshold where you can push yourself. But how much of that really is attributed to somebody's tenacity and commitment to becoming an absolute master in one specific art form, like, and in this case, it would be fighting and understanding the jiu-jitsu, like the MMA, I guess, umbrella of it all, and just becoming a tactical chest assassin in the words of Joe Rogan, an assassin.
No, that's right. I mean, you look at like people like, you know, like Connor McDavid, you know, like this guy is just a freak when it comes to hockey. Obviously, he has natural ability. His brother is a phenomenal hockey player too, and he has an unparalleled training, like discipline. Like he does not stop training and trying to do better, and he has a natural ability. And now you have a guy that's like catching up with like the greats, like Wayne Gretzky, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like that's his natural ability, and then you now also have, so you've harnessed, you figured out what you're put in this world, let's say, to be. And you have an unreal amount of drive in you to train, and then you get elite.
Yeah,
that's what you get. It's your byproduct.
So where did this take you? You got into it you were 19 when you first started.
Yeah, you had to be 19. You had to be like the legal, I don't know, like legal drinking age. I don't know, in BC. I'm not sure how they come up with a legal minimum age to compete. It was in British Columbia, so. We competed 7 times. They were all back to back pretty quick, because I think that my last fight I was probably about like 21, maybe 22. So 3 years, 7 fights. Yeah, something like that.
And you're from Dawson Creek?
Yeah. Born and raised in Dawson.
Shout out to Dawson Creek. You know how many people are from Dawson Creek or Fort St. John? That's not crazy. Too many, is it?
We did good, and I got to travel too. You know, we competed, and I didn't go real far. We went down to, I think Mission. I think it was Mission or somewhere just outside of Mission, BC. Competed in Prince George a couple times. They got the Prince George Fight Club, And there's some tough dudes.
I bet. Yeah, I was gonna say. I bet you there's a talent there, a pool of talent.
Oh yeah, there's a couple guys there that they were in the big show in UFC. The one guy, can't remember his name now. Dang, I wish I remember. But anyway, his last fight in UFC was with Forrest Griffin.
Oh really?
Yeah. And the guy that I fought, he was his trainer. So the guy, his name was like, it'll come to me, maybe Phil or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, I scrapped a guy in Prince George that he was training under, and I had my hands full with that dude. He was, and that guy, I beat him, obviously I was, and then that was my last fight. And if I would have, it was shortly after that, got into a bad car wreck at work on my way to work. But when I won that fight in Prince George, the meal ticket from there was the prelim fight in Vancouver when UFC came to Vancouver.
Really?
Yeah, but so I had the ticket. I would have been in the prelims. I mean, in Vancouver, and that however many years ago that was now. But
and a car accident is what?
Yeah, I got into a car wreck on the way to work. I was kind of burning the candle at both ends, and didn't have enough sleep, and was heading to work for night shift. And I guess I fell asleep at the wheel. I don't remember it, but my truck was GPSed. It was a work truck, and I hit a green power pole doing 98.9 kilometers an hour, and the power pole didn't give. So. Whoa. Yeah, spent the entire summer in the Grand Prairie Hospital on the second floor.
Really?
Nice parking lot view.
What kind of injuries? What happened?
It was a hip injury. I had a head injury. It was swelling in the frontal part of the lobe. So I had lost all my short-term memory.
Really?
Yeah, I laugh about it now. It wasn't funny at the time, but it was like that movie 50 First Dates with Adam Sandler, except for it wasn't funny.
50 First Dates?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I wake up in the morning and just be like looking around. What the heck
What is that? On? That's not amnesia, but that's a wicked case of I guess it's a form of whiplash.
Yeah, it's a form of shit, man. Yeah. It was not good at all. I had my girlfriend at the time, my ex. She was really good about it. She spent pretty well the whole summer in the hospital with me, and yeah, that
took a while to recover from.
Yeah. So the swelling came down, and every time, every day the swelling went down a little bit more, but pretty well, the more the swelling went down, the better I could retain things. But I mean, I was only retaining I don't know, because obviously I don't remember, but I'm thinking there was about 5% of the day in the beginning.
Wow.
So, I'd go to bed and wake up in the morning and the next day, and I could remember 5% of the previous day, which is, a matter of a few minutes, and then just nothing for about the last 6 to 9 months before that. Totally blacked
that must have been just, were you aware of it? Like when you woke up?
Every time I woke up, I was I had a little notepad beside me, and I had to read it, and it was today is, July 27th, whatever day, and it was you were in a car accident, 6 weeks ago. And
so how far back did that go? When you read that note, was this okay, this is helping me? You knew where it was coming from, or were you what the hell every time you're reading this for the first time?
So unfortunately, I don't remember because I wasn't able. So at one point, I think I was in there for probably about a month or so. And that was when I was waking up, and I would see the note, and it would kind of come back to me. Oh. But the note wasn't from the beginning, and the note was of that day. And then it was it wasn't
no, so it wasn't ongoing. It was just to try and actually.
Yeah, it wasn't it was a 17-page note. You know what I mean? Just it was because she was doing it. I think if I like I say, this is a long time ago too. As she was doing it pretty well, she did it every day for what she knew what to expect, what I was probably going to remember, where I was going to start off that
started day. Figuring out exactly what moments, would probably be easier.
Yeah. And as the swelling went down, the memory got better. It was an exponential thing, right? Yeah. So so it was for the first, maybe, I don't know, I'm just throwing darts here, but say for the first 10 days, I remembered 1% of the previous day. And then all of a sudden it was 2%. Then the next day it was 3%, and then it was 4%. And so it once it started getting better, it got a lot better. But
brain injuries are no joke, man.
Oh man, I still have I used to have the most crazy memory. I was almost photographic memory, really good. And now my memory is brutal, and I know it's
my brother got smacked by a car. He got launched 30 feet and was knocked out. He was in a coma for, I forget, it was 2 or 3 weeks, and then he had to learn how to walk and talk, and You know, he was in that hospital where they'd learn how to kick a ball up against a wall.
Yeah.
And a lot of things came out of that as far as the fatigue level, the ability to be able to understand certain things like humor, emotion, like people's, I think punchlines are when you say something and it's within a certain context, seemed like there was a lot of after the thought, kind of thinking back and then having a better understanding because they weren't too sure how to figure it out in the moment. One of the things the doctor said just in preparation for the family was that usually a brain injury is where it exaggerates or it enhances certain personality traits from neutral, and it can go one way or the other. So if you have a disposition for being aggressive or you're not able to tolerate stress all that well, it could exaggerate that either to where you're good at it, or a lot of times where it's a little bit more of a weakness, right? So if you're already a little bit short-tempered, then you get really aggressive, or maybe you get ultra passive and withdrawn.
Yeah.
Did you notice a little bit about that maybe with?
Honestly, I got crazy lucky. I didn't have like any real physical, like, what do you want to call like effects from it. I mean, my mechanical skills were great. It was just the cognitive memory. I had a lot of exercises. I had to go, once they let me out of the hospital, I had to go to Grand Prairie twice a month, once every 2 weeks, whatever. And I would do like an hour or so, I think, of exercises with I don't know what they want to call, like a nurse or a woman who was trained on how to make you like try to get your memory back. So she would, give you shapes and numbers and letters, and she would show you something. It was like, like flashcards, and then she would, okay, well, now what do you remember? And I'm like, oh, triangle, circle, square. And then she's like, okay, and then what? And I'm like, so it was ultimately like the term for it was like I had cognitive memory loss. And it just, it got better to the point where I was, I was off work for a while. I think I was about 18 months or just about 2 years I was off work. Before the doctor it was like I was working for Shell at the time. So the Shell doctor had to sign off on me to return to work. It wasn't even like my family doctor had kind of signed off. Like, he can go back to work, whatever. And after a year, but the Shell doctors, they would do these cognitive memory tests, and they didn't like where I was at. So like, you got to stay off longer. So they finally let me back after, I think it was between 18 months and 2 years.
How was that coming to terms with the fact that you wouldn't be able to get back into the ring?
I mean, honestly, I wasn't really bothered with it anymore. I kind of came to terms with like the fact, I wasn't making any money at it, and it was, I maybe I kind of like used it also as like, this is like a sign that I should do something different. You know what I mean? And it really didn't bother me at all. I mean, the biggest thing that I didn't know what to do was like I had this void, right? I'm like, well, now what do I do? Because I've always been a very busy person. Like I get out of bed early and I maximize my day, man. I stay up as late as I can, man. I'll be falling asleep. I mean, sometimes I go to bed early because I'm so exhausted because like I'm so busy all day. I try to use every minute I can, but so now I'm just like, well, now I don't train, or compete, obviously, because the doctor's like, yeah, like you can't get hit in the head again.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that would be.
So I mean, it was like, like my family around me at the time was, they're definitely on the doctor side. They're like, yeah, you're not gonna do that.
Well, even exercise, if you're starting to overdo exercise, sometimes I would imagine high intensity. Like if you're doing aerobic and cardio, it's not so bad, but getting into proper training and free weights, I mean. Yeah,
that was the thing, right? So then, and in saying that, that's what I did. And so.
So you got in, is that the segue into bodybuilding?
That's how I got into bodybuilding.
Really?
Yeah. So one of my really closest friends, Jarrett Arndt, he's from Dawson as well, and one of the most successful bodybuilders that the region has produced. 100% natural guy.
Who was that?
Jarrett Arndt.
Oh, okay.
So he's co-owner of True North Fitness. This dude is just like, that's his guy as an encyclopedia. It's kind of a guy that you could like have in here, like on a podcast.
Man, we should.
Not that he's a talkative person and stuff like that, but he's a very like discipline. You want to talk about discipline? Like this dude is like, he's like an inspirational type person. He's a friend for me, you know. But anyway, so Jarrett was 100% natural bodybuilder, drug-free. And he was, I mean, just killing competitions like crazy around the same time that I was doing martial arts. And him and I were not like really good buddies, but we were, you know, like we knew of each other and we were, you know, friends, buddies, whatever you want to say, you know, like in a small town. I mean, you're kind of almost friends with everyone, right? And I think he was like a year or two younger than me from high school. Anyway, and so I started, you know, just started working out because I've always been in relatively good shape, even through like my martial arts. And I've just always had like a natural, you know, I was gifted with a decent build, you know, I've always been a lean, you know, always had, you know, like the good core strength. And I mean, I'm humble about it, but I'm definitely grateful too. And like, I know that I was born with, you know, my dad must have passed something on because he was a jack dude and I was just, you know, born in pretty good shape and my body was just that makeup. So Jarrett was, you know, suggested to me, I was just BSing with him one day. I was having a beer at Rockwell's or something. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I heard about your accident and this and that. And you know, you've always been in pretty good shape. Like, I want you to, you know, start like crushing the gym. And I was like, I've actually been kind of hitting it a little bit like in my mom and dad's basement because my dad always worked on the basement. He never went to a public gym. So I'd go to mom and dad's and hit the basement. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go to like a public gym. I've never been to one of these. So I just kind of like didn't know what to do with myself when I went to this gym, and it was Gridiron Fitness in Dawson Creek. And that's where Jarrett was working all the time, as long before he had the gym he owns now. And I fell in love with it. I mean, I didn't know if I'd like being in public with other people lifting weights. And I mean, I took to it like a moth to flame. I mean, I was addicted. So long story short, I started lifting heavy, like not heavy weight, but I started like going heavy, like going regular and going really hard at it. And I think it would have been about in the month of May 2012. And after a couple of months, I was like, you know what, I want to do a competition because it's just in me to compete. I don't know why. Maybe I think it's because I'm the youngest of three. And I always felt like I had to prove myself because my brothers were way older than me. Like my next oldest brother is like 5.5 years older. And then my oldest brother is 8 years older than me. So I got left out all the time when I was a kid. And it's a part of, you know, it's maybe who I am today because I got left out all the time because I was told I was too small, too young, you know, yada, yada. And I was like, no, I'm not. So it just lit a fire in me. So anyway, I think that's the reason why I'm a competitive person now. And
once you started seeing the results, it was like, ooh, this is it.
Yeah, and I needed a goal. I needed to compete. So I told Jarrett, I was like, can you train me? Because he's going to the gym and the same gym that I am by his suggestion. And I was like, you know, and he wasn't really competing much anymore at that point. He had won a few shows, I think. I didn't really track his career, but he did it for a bit, and then that was it. Then he did powerlifting and stuff like that. But anyway, I decided, can you train me? Like, I want to do a bodybuilding show. And he was like, well, you know, it takes some serious commitment and this and that, and it's not just coming in here and lifting. It's like, it's diet, it's discipline, it's not drinking, it's rest, it's this. And I was like, yeah, I'm good with that. And he's like, oh, I know you are, like, because he knows the kind of person I am. So anyway, it was around May. I decided I wanted to compete, and I did a show in July the next year. So it was about, maybe it was, either way, it was about 13, 14 months. I trained hard, and I mean, I went like 7 days a week. I went like way overboard.
Oh,
people
man,
are like, you're supposed to take rest days. You're supposed to do this. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it my way. Like, yeah, fuck that. Watch me. So tell me I can't do something because I'm really going to do it. So anyhow, I competed down in Vancouver. And
how long was that? How long did it take you from?
If it was 14 months, I trained until I did my first show. And
you got to that level in just over a year?
I competed. I used to compete at 155. I walked around about I competed at the same, like when I was in martial arts, I competed at 155, and that's about what I walked around at. I didn't really cut weight for it. I've always been, you know, I was never a big dude. You know, I'm 5'9" and lean. I've always been crazy lean. But anyhow, so I went from 155 to 174 in 14 months or whatever it was. Oh, so I mean, I put on, and I mean, that was straight lean mass. There was no bulking in there. I mean, I was trying to like bulk, and I was bulking, but I never lost my abs. I mean, they call me the Onion Man because I'm built like layers. That was my nickname at the gym, the Onion Man. That's funny, as Jared said, I came up with that one. Anyway, so I competed and that's
great. So, I mean, the elephant in the room when you go into that kind of mass so short is.
Oh, but yeah, people are just, that guy's juice.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
On steroids, he's on this, he's that. I'm like, oh yeah. I don't
the
know.
Liver King. I mean.
Yeah, the Liver. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. I was pre-Liver King. I was the original, the OG. But yeah, so, yeah, we did a show. It was 14 months later. And I competed in, let me think here. Yeah, I competed in 2 divisions in one show because I'm that guy. And I got second in one division and 5th in the other division. So I made first call. So I was like, upset. Everyone in the crowd, like my mom and dad came down, had some friends down there, and it was a big show. It was in Vancouver at the River Rock Casino. I mean, like this, you're competing with dudes from like international show. And I got 2nd and 5th. So, I mean, I should have been, at the time now I'm like looking back, I'm like, yeah, I did good. But I mean, in the moment, man, I was livid. I didn't win. I just couldn't believe it.
Why did you, so there's so much to kind of figure out with that. But I mean, as far as not going in there with the mindset of expecting to win, was there, did you think the symmetry and how you were able to kind of pick out certain body parts and then kind of set yourself up for the day of competing where you're like, okay, I got everything I need in place to be able to kind of knock this out of the park, and when you hit a pose, you could feel everything kind of just hit that spot, like when you hit something.
I felt good. Honestly, it never crossed my mind that I wasn't going to win.
Really, that just
and I'm not like, I don't mean to sound like arrogant or cocky or anything like that. I'm not that guy, but I don't like to lose, and it never even crossed my mind to think about like, oh, you're not, what if you don't win? I'm just like, well, I'm going to win this, like, I mean, because I'm going to do it, and that's why,
There's just that,
but I didn't. I'm just, that night I was just, I was upset, and I was starving to death, so I'm like eating like crazy because I did the cut and stuff, and it was a huge learning thing. And a lot of the problem with, not the problem, I don't know the right word, is the reason why I didn't do better than I did and place better than I did was the cut. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and Jarrett was like, bless his heart, but he was really busy. He had something else on, like he didn't even go to the show or nothing, so when he is like a self-learner, Jared is. So it was hard for him to, be able to engage and teach me how to cut properly because he did it only for himself and he self-learned. So I think it was tough for him to really, and he didn't boast himself or advertise himself as a personal trainer or anything like that. Right.
How long did you guys work together?
Well, that full 14 months,
and did that include like a daily thing where that conversation was carried over into the gym and you were able to kind of figure out the nuance?
We hung out like a little bit outside the gym as like that's when our friendship really like blossomed into like a real friendship. And that's when, it was the beginning of our, he's one of my closest friends now still this day. But yeah, we worked out in the gym every day together because it was like the noon crew is what we were known as. Everyone would go at 12 o'clock noon. So, we would be in the gym working out together, and he was doing his thing because he was training for powerlifting. It's not, we didn't like train together, so to speak, like the same type of weight, and maybe not always the same like chest day and all that stuff. But he was there, to guide me along. I'd be doing something, and and he'd be like, okay, when you're doing that, like go deeper, do this, do that, and he would just critique how I lifted and taught me proper form and discipline. And it 100% made me as successful as I am in the gym still, today, like I'm able to put some mass on and put my mind to it, and I can still hold my own today, and don't look too terrible. Like,
what is it when you say put your mind to it? Is there a technique that you're using that allows you to be able to kind of hold that form when it's the most uncomfortable to get the maximum amount of gain?
For me, it was always like my biggest slogan. I made it, but I adopted it kind of like from what I learned from Jared, was always form over weight. I mean, the only thing that can read numbers on those weights is your mind, and you're not trying to grow your mind in there. You're trying to grow your body. So
it's a mental game when it comes to that.
It is a
isn't it?
mental game. I mean, lots of people, I'm guilty of it too. And you grab, the 100-pound dumbbells and, start curling 100-pound dumbbells with this horrible form. And it's like, or I could grab the 40-pound dumbbells and just super, super strict form and proper, and I'm going to get twice the gain.
Do you prep yourself mentally for each rep so that you don't lose focus? You have that focus for the duration of that set or that rep from beginning right to end. You kind of
I
get
use the
yourself
mirrors.
into a place.
I use the mirrors like crazy to watch myself, and just because I know what proper form looks like. And if I start to see myself getting lazy, I get in my head like, that was not a good looking rep. Every rep should look perfect until you get to the end.
Is there a little bit of feeling with it? Like when the proper form doesn't have, I think, the same intensity as far as the muscle
100%.
straining?
You can feel it.
Yeah.
I'll be lifting with like lots of people that I know, and like back in the day when I used to like go to the gym all the time, I had friends that had been going to the gym for years, and then I showed up like, oh, Jay Shaw's working in the gym, working out in the gym, and their bodies didn't change much, and they'd been in there for 2 or 3 years, and I came in there in 14 months and just, put on 20 pounds of lean mass, and they were like, "What are you doing different? Like what drugs are you using?" I'm like, "I'm not using drugs.
It's the focus.
I'm eating 8 meals a day. I never cheat on my meals. I never miss a meal, and I put my work in the gym. I'm not here to talk and hang out and pick up chicks. I'm here to lift." And a lot of my buddies are like, can I work out with you? Like, I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And then, I would grab a dumbbell or grab this or grab that and start working it. And then they would do it. And I'd be like, go grab a lighter one. And they were, well, no, I've been lifting this. I'm like, go grab a light. Like, you've got a 40 in your hand, say, go grab a 20. Well, I don't need to go down that. But yeah. And then I'd watch them do a rep, and I'd be like, nope, pull your elbow in, lift your wrist. Okay, now stop there. Hold it, let it down, hold it, lift it up. And they do 6 reps of that, and then their arm's going to fall off. And they're like, oh, I got the craziest pump right now. I'm like, weird, hey? Because right now you're supposed to be working your biceps, but when you're, doing your arm curls and you got too much weight on, you're doing like a whole upper body exercise because your hips are swinging, your back is swinging, your neck is, it's like when you're in the gym and you're working, say you're doing back and biceps. That's a common one, right? Back and biceps. Those are the only muscle groups that should be working. You got to isolate everything else to make sure that, because otherwise you're just cheating. And the best way to rip and tear and rebuild and gain muscle is to isolate that muscle. So the easiest way to get away from that is by lifting too much, because then all of your other body parts are helping because you're not isolating and you're defeating the purpose. That's what it comes down to. It's being strict.
And I think having an understanding of not only proper form, but being able to focus on that particular muscle group. Flexing has a lot to do. Flexing's flexing, but I think the ability to flex and isolate certain muscle groups to be able to get a real...
100%. If you can flex whatever muscle group you're working at the top of your rep, and you can give it a squeeze, game changer.
Yeah.
Game changer. And you can't do that, I'm telling you right now from experience, when you have too much weight in your hand.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're using something else to compromise. Yep. So with momentum or something. Yep. And then the mental game, tell me if I'm wrong on this, because I've heard this analogy and it kind of was like, you captured something there. You know how everybody can relate to phones. Yep. And if you're on TikTok or Facebook too much, a lot of the times it's a reflex. You'll pick your phone up, and if you're bored or you're standing in line at the bank, or if you're at a stoplight or whatever it is, you go take a shit, man. It's right there. It's a reflex. And to break that is extremely hard. Mm-hmm. And to stay focused on, a rep when you're in the gym. And that's why I asked, do you kind of do a little bit of a mental setup with it? Because you don't even notice picking up the phone. Mm-hmm. After a while, you don't notice some of those little nuances. You got to actually kind of stay aware of it. And when you're in the gym and you're doing a set, a lot of times that breaking form or cheating somehow is that automatic little reflex to, you don't even notice it sometimes until you start getting aware and focused, like ultra laser focused on it, to where you're so focused, you don't have that opportunity to be able to pick up your phone or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. That is definitely a part of it. And like I say, I relate to go back to the mirrors again, because you know when you're watching yourself in the mirrors, like what you're doing, right? Because you can see yourself. And I've worked out at
Mirrors
a lot of places.
is a good tool for that then.
It 100% is. I mean, like I've worked out lots of places, and you know, like we used to have like a gym, like when I do go to work once in a while, and that we don't have mirrors in there, and I don't get the same pump. I don't get the same workout because I can't sit there and critique myself. And I like I say, I know what a good rep looks like, no matter what the exercise is. Doesn't matter. I've done it enough to where I know what they should look like. And when I throw a bad rep, because I'm watching myself. So I try to, like when you're talking about mental, I try not to think about anything else. I'm looking at the gym, and I'm not looking into my own eyes. I'm looking at if I'm working arms, I'm looking at my biceps, I'm looking at my hands, I'm looking at my shoulders, I'm looking at my elbows to see if I'm swinging. And as soon as things start swinging, I know I'm like,
there must be a little bit of a body position to be able to watch that in the mirror without breaking that form.
Yeah,
because your head typically kind of.
Oh yeah, I mean it's repetitive. I mean, when you go into the gym as much as I did, especially like back in the day, like you know exactly what how you got to sit, where you got to sit, what you got to do to try to really isolate that muscle when you're doing that rep and that exercise. The last few reps of every set, they can get messy, what I call them messy, where they're not very strict form, because that's just, you're just trying to get burn that last.
That's the juice though. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he said the best way to be able to get the juice out of a muscle is to get your mind in the muscle.
Yeah.
And I think what he was saying was you got to fixate on it so much and get your head into there at the very end of it all, where it really matters the most, and everything's squealing to, cheat or do something that'll make that uncomfortable feeling go away. That's the moment you want to cherish and try and capture the most out of.
100%. For me is like, once I'm done, like when I'm at the end of my set and I'm losing my form and I'm done, like my strength is pretty well gone and that set's pretty well done, I'll squeeze at least 2 more out. And if I have to swing a little bit and lose the form, my strict form, and throw some shitty form in there, as long as I can, get it up properly and then like just slowly let dumbbell down or whatever, that is when you actually gain the muscle. It's like when it starts hurting, that's when you start gaining. As soon as it starts to like hurt and get hard, and then you put the dumbbell down and you're finish a set, those last 2 reps, that's actually where you get your gain.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I've told a lot of guys that haven't had much change. They want to get to a certain size, and you go, you watch them, and they're putting in like, work, and then that right when you can tell like they're really starting to power out and they're getting done, boom, they rack. And I'm like, you had 2 more reps in you, and you know that those last 2 reps of that set are the difference of what you're going to look like in 6 months. You gotta understand that. Like there's like the whole like no pain, no gain. Yeah. That is no bullshit. If you stop when it starts hurting, you're losing out. You might as well not even go. If you want to gain muscle, you have to put those last 2 reps in at every set. That's how you get muscle.
Start counting when it starts hurting.
Yeah, exactly. That's like, the old Muhammad Ali. Like how many push-ups can you do, or how many sit-ups can you do? It's like, I only start counting when it starts hurting.
It starts hurting. Was that Muhammad, or was that, it was one of Goggins almost.
I'm pretty sure it was Muhammad.
One of the 2, probably Muhammad.
It was Muhammad. It's like, that was someone asked him in an interview one time.
That was exactly.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like, how many sit-ups can you do? And he said, I only start counting when I start hurting.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it. And then that's, I'm pretty sure it was Arnold who said the juice one, because it was like, oh man, like to replace that void. Yeah,
it could very well be Arnold. I mean, Arnold has about like, that guy. He's another guy that has like 100 sayings, and they are all very good. So,
yeah. So when we're talking about, trying to put on mass like that, the other part, there's three ingredients. You got to have, I think, obviously, put the time in.
Yeah.
There's the mental end of it, that, of really actually have that tenacity, like a pit bull, to latch onto it. And then the diet part is a huge role, isn't it?
The diet is probably 75% of it or more. I've heard people say that before, and I was like, yeah, right. If you go and put in hard enough work in the gym, it doesn't matter your diet. And definitely not the
The wild thing now, though, is that the huge array of opinions, tactics, approaches when it comes to diet now. It used to be carb. Everything had to do with carb. The carb is what repaired the muscle and gave you the mass. Over time, people started to, realize that the highest carb, even though it gave you mass, was also the most unhealthy way because of how many calories your body had to process and the insulin in your body to be able to maintain, I think, other, offsetting measures. Like, I've heard, and this is where I really don't, I'm walking out of my knowledge base a lot here, but, the diabetes and a lot of, I think, other, we're talking about it, not offsetting factors, I guess, that start to come from it. So what diet did you use? Was it carb based?
I guess where a lot of guys get messed up with like the carb thing is carbs and protein and this and that. People have to understand that everybody's body is different. What may work for you is not going to work for me. It depends on like your whole genetic makeup, and like it's not a general thing where you should do, your diet. If you want to gain muscle mass, it's got to be, 30% carbs and then, like 70% protein or whatever. Figure out all this macro. That's unfortunately, it's not like we're not all cookie cutters. Like your body is different than mine. You're taller than me. You know what I mean? Like your feet are bigger. My hands are, like everyone's built different, and every person's body reacts differently to what you put in it. That's all the honest truth.
Well, how did you figure out your diet?
For me, man, I went with the old school Arnold diet, man. So, yeah, I mean, I ate a lot. So my diet was 8 meals a day.
Fuck.
I'm trying to remember. Yeah. And I remember keeping in mind, I'm 5'9", and I started 155, and my first show 14 months later was 174. And I mean, a huge part of that was my mom. She cooked for me. She would pick up like the big frozen chicken breasts from Costco, those big boxes, and I would go through one of those in 3-4 days. I mean, it was a full-time job for her to how much cook. So I'm trying to remember this now. So I'll take it from the first thing in the morning. So I'd wake up first thing in the morning, and I would have oatmeal, just plain oatmeal, and I'd mix in protein powder with it. And then I would get up at, oh man, I wish I would have wrote this stuff down before we did the podcast. I knew this was going to come out. I think I'm trying not to butcher this, but I think I'd get up 4:45, 5 a.m., the oatmeal and the protein powder in me. 5:30, I would be in the gym, and then I would work out until 6. I would do so this is when I was actually back at work too as well. So when I was on shift, I'll just talk. So yeah, 5:30 I was in the gym. I'd work out till about 6:45, so about an hour and 15 minutes. Then I go to work all day. And then, so I would eat every 2 hours on average. So I guess however that would work out. I would have it was always chicken and rice and mixed vegetables. It's all it was. I mean, it was just like the frozen peas and carrots, which is like not the greatest vegetable for you, obviously, but it was convenient. So, I mean, it is what it is. So, every meal was a chicken breast and 2 cups of rice and a half a cup of vegetables. And then,
did you weigh any of this, or were you just kind of figuring out portion size off of what you knew you could eat?
Exactly. I mean, that's just, I knew I never let it go empty. I knew that there was lots of times where I wanted to be sick to my stomach. I was like not hungry because I'd been, just over 2 hours since I ate last. Yeah. But I would just, you got to eat to grow. That's 3 words my dad and a lot of people said, eat to grow. That's the biggest thing, right? So you got to eat. But yeah, anyway, so chicken breast, 2 cups of rice, half cup vegetables, and then my noon meal was always had like a steak instead of the chicken breast. So I had my 1 red meat a day, and then that would go on throughout the whole day. And then in the evening, I would go into the gym again after I got off work about 7 o'clock at night, and I'd work out again from 7 to 8 p.m. and then eat my meals again throughout the evening, and then I would go to bed at whatever time. Say I think I'd go to bed at like 9 o'clock at night, and I had an alarm set on my phone for midnight, and my alarm would go off, and I'd wake up and I had a shaker cup beside me with the.
You woke
protein.
up and actually, holy
I'd wake up and
Wow.
the shaker cup is sitting there full of protein powder. I had a bottle of water like this right beside it.
Yeah.
So I'd wake up, take the top off, fill it up,
No
shake
way.
it up, drink it, and I'd boom, go back to bed,
Unreal.
and then my alarm would go off again at 4:45, and I would
Way you go.
do it all over again. And then when I was on days off, I went to the gym, and instead of in the morning, I'd go at noon until 1:15 or whatever in the afternoon. And with my hour and 15 minutes is about what I try to cap it out at. And then I would go and again in the evening about like 6:00, 6:30 at night. And I would do, sometimes I would just stretch. Sometimes I would, start repping out a little bit and doing, I didn't do a ton of cardio until it was time to start cutting. So,
Well, cardio, how much value is there in cardio? Like if you're just bulking,
there's no, I mean, if you're bulking, the bodybuilder rule is like, if you can walk instead of run, walk. If you can sit instead of walking, sit. That's how you grow. I mean, that's just the way, that's just the truth of it for me anyway. And that's, I've taken that and I adopted it and I used it and it worked great. And yeah, so I got back from my first show and everyone was all happy for me. And I was like super disappointed in myself for not winning. And a switch just went off in my head. And that was, so the first time I competed, that 14 months, I never did 2-a-days. Like I just explained, I did the 2-a-days. I only did once a day. That was it. And then I would take Sundays off. And I come back from my second show, come back to my first show and I took 1 week off. And I said to Jarrett, I'm like, I'm competing in that show again next year and I'm going to win it. And he was just like, yeah, man. Like, sure you will. Yeah. Maybe you will. And he never doubted me, but he was kind of like, you already want to do it again? Like you just took a week off. Like most people, like they don't want to even see the gym because it takes a lot out of you to do the shows. You got to cut the weight and the water and yada, yada.
Well, that routine you just outlined, I mean, that's a hell of a...
Yeah. So that's when the 2 days came, man. I took 1 week after the first show. I took 1 week off and then I was in the gym twice a day. And I maybe took, over the course of the next 12 months, I maybe took 15 days off the gym in a year. Wow. And I hired another, not a trainer, well, the guy was a trainer, I guess, but he was a dietitian or whatever they call him. And he gave me my diet for the last 6 weeks before the show. And I stuck to it to a T. And he's a nutritionist as well. And then he helped me with my cut as well. So I did a way harder cut and carb loading and all that stuff.
So a cut, is that dehydrate? What is
So I cut the carbs out about, man, I'm trying to remember. It was my bad memory again. I think, so we competed on a Saturday. So I think about on the Sunday, so about like 6 days before the show, I stopped eating carbs completely. There was no carbohydrates whatsoever at all.
What did you replace it with?
Just more protein. Oh. Yeah, it was just zero carbs. So what happens is the carbs are like it fills your muscle up. So what happens is when you get rid of the carbs, your muscles like shrink like crazy and they kind of like deplete. They like shrivel up, so to speak. So I depleted the carbs. I think I had no carbs for, I think maybe Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I had a little bit of carbs. I can't remember the amount. This is way too long ago now. This would be because my second show was 2015. So however many years ago, that was 8 years ago, I guess now. So Wednesday, I introduced a little bit of carbs, and I think in the morning and then the evening or afternoon, or whatever. And then Thursday, you start your carb load. So you start to load up hard with your carbs. So I loaded hard. I mean, I ate so many carbs. I don't remember how much, but it was like equivalent to like one of those family packs of rice, the minute rice, or the huge family pack ones. I ate 2 of those boxes in 2 days. Yeah. Wow. So I carb loaded. And there was some other carbs in there too. I mean, there was like,
you got to throw something in there to kind of shit it out a little bit.
You're drinking water, man. You're drinking like you're heavy on the water. So, wow. So then I carb loaded. What the whole idea behind that is your muscles will contract down like crazy when you're carb depleted. Yeah. And then when you introduce your carbs again, your muscles will actually kind of like compensate, and they'll pull in 110% of your natural capacity of what your muscles can fill to with the carbs when you carb load after you deplete. Because you shock your body, and your body's a very smart thing. So all of a sudden your body's starving those carbs, and you introduce the carbs, and that their body's holding onto those carbs like crazy. And then instead of just getting it to 100% of its capacity and then you digest the rest, your muscles will just keep pulling and pulling and pulling in that extra 10%. So that's what you do. And then as you're doing that at the end of it on the Friday, then, or on the Thursday, so I guess halfway through my carb loading day, then you start cutting your water out. So what happens? You start cutting the water out.
So now you've got that striation.
So you get, so it
what
things,
is this striation?
It's striation.
Yeah,
so striation's in your muscle, but so like what the water cutting does is it's your tissues in your skin. It's like the between your muscle and like the outer layer of skin is where all the water, not all the water, but that's where a lot of water lies in your body. So when you start pulling out that water, your skin gets really thin and tight. So imagine this. So now your skin is getting thin and tight, and your muscles are holding 110% of what they normally hold in your muscles. So now you get this compounding effect where you can really start to see the shreddedness. You know what I mean? Like, because you're taking away the padding, so to speak, and you're increasing the muscle under that padding. So I mean, all you're seeing is like, muscles. I mean, you're like, the skin is like paper thin and tight, man.
Is it uncomfortable?
Yeah. It's a crazy world, man. Cause like, well, I'll get into that after, but, ask me about that after. So, so that's what we did, Thursday, Friday. I mean, you're like, now Friday is 0 water. I think I had like maybe 100 mils of water all Friday. And then, Saturday morning is like, so Saturday's the show. So Friday night, you get spray tanned and all that stuff. Like, and when you got to like lay flat on your hotel bed, and you got to bring your own sheet to the wet, because if you ruin the sheets, they charge you. So you got to take your own sheets to the hotel, and these are all the things you learn right over so yeah, you lay there, and then in the morning you wake up and you realize you had your hand on your stomach, and then you got to get touched up and yada yada whatever. So it's all a part of it. You go down to where you're doing the show, and you got like a room in the back, and you get kind of like a change room, like if you're like an athlete, and you get put in with whatever division you're competing in. And I was doing double division again, so I had 2 different rooms I could hang out in and talk with the guys and start to like pump up and stuff. And everyone has their own ritual with what they're going to do on Saturday morning. Some guys will start carb loading more. Some guys will stop eating carbs. Some guys start drinking a little bit of water. Then it's all over the place. For me, I carb loaded on, like I said, I started introducing a little bit on Wednesday, carb loaded hard Thursday, Friday, and then I stopped the carbs, and there's no more carbs after, I think, like noon or mid-afternoon Friday. Then we stopped the carbs again because my muscles were full, and now I'm trying to make sure that I deplete every other little thing in my body, like that could help hold water. So there we were, back on carb depleting again, because it takes a while for the muscles to start to really deplete, to really affect you before you flatten out. Again, depends on the person. Everyone's a little different, and that's why sometimes you got to do a couple shows before you really hit it and do it right.
Carbs retain water quite a bit. Oh yeah,
they'll hold water on you. Yeah.
So that's why you would cut that out. I
cut that out last minute again, because I was just doing everything I could to thin the skin and get it tight. So Saturday morning, I went, got in there, got all my touch up done, and I think to maybe 10 in the morning or something is when we did like our first walkouts. And so what my trainer had me do, and my nutritionist, is I had a big plastic, like a tub of those like sugary gummy worms.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because they're straight carbs and sugar, right?
Yeah, and damn good.
And I hadn't had any sugar or anything like that, or caffeine or nothing like that, like for so long. So he said, grab yourself a bottle of red wine and grab a tub of those gummy worms and a jar of Nutella.
What?
So I was like, that was Saturday morning, man. So I'm like, and he had it written down. So it's like about an hour and a half before the first walkouts. You're starting to do, you got like the stretchy bands in the back and starting to get your pump on a bit, and getting everything kind of hyped up. I just take like a handful of these gummy worms, man, because it was like right to the team. It was like ding. I think it was like 9 o'clock, and I knew it was like, it's time to feed. So I opened up this this tub of these gummy worms, and I just grabbed this handful, man. I'm starting mounting these gummy worms, and guys are just like beside me, and they're like who's your trainer? And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but he told me this is what I should do. So anyway, I have a handful of these gummy worms. And then I got like a big spoon and I'm eating like Nutella, and I can feel my body like a drug, man. Just bzzz, like, I mean, I'm getting energy and I'm like, feel like I'm like levitating because I haven't had like sugar or caffeine in so long. And then I popped that bottle of red wine and I drank about like a glass and a bit worth. And what happens, that red wine makes your veins even more red.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Oh,
so now
here I was thinking the wine was supposed to break the jelly bean.
no. So the alcohol, it's a dehydrant too, right? So then also helps with the thin skinning or skin thinning, right? So now imagine this. So now my blood sugar level's crazy. So I'm getting vascular like nuts. And now I've got like these really red veins and my skin's thin and I'm getting carbohydrates again. So I'm just like, and
you're kind of, you're working your muscles a little bit.
Yeah, I got the stretchy bands going. So I'm like, and like from the time I walked in, I felt like you knew that I was going to be in the top 5. Like I could tell, like I was reading the room and I'm like I said, I'm not arrogant. I'm a humble person, but I can see my competition and I know what I look like.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to make top 5. So I'll go into the other room because I'm doing double division. And I'm like, I'm going to make top 5 here too. You know, I think I can do this. And then I started hitting all these things that my nutritionist, you know, told me to do, you know, eat. And I'm pumping up and you got all the mirrors in the back and I can feel myself growing. Wow. And I'm like, this is a good thing. I think I hired the right guy, you know, and people are like looking over at me and they're seeing me like get pumped up, you know, with the bands and like what I'm eating. And you can tell like their faces are of concern for them. Yeah. And I knew, I'm like, I knew going into that one, I felt even better. I'm like, I'm going to nail this one. Awesome. And like the first show I was so scared. I mean, you're in like a skimpy little, it's like a Speedo and you're going in front of hundreds of people and everyone's like, oh, don't worry. When you go up there, like the lights are so bright on you, you can't see the crowd. So you don't really know. That's bullshit, man. You see every single face.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
I was like, so nervous. I thought it was like a faint, man. But the second show, I had crazy butterflies. I was nervous again, but I harnessed it and I knew that I was going to nail it. So I went out and did my T-walk and then you go into the back then you walk to the back of the stage and then they call which they call first call. So they call the top 5 and I was the first guy to get called forward and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good sign, right? So, they called us all, you know, the 5 of us forward and then they place people side by side to whoever looks, you know, like they try to make, so if you got 2 guys that look kind of the same and they're trying to figure out who's better, they'll move you around. They'll say, okay, say I was like number 37, switch with number 28. And you kind of look down and you see they have like the little button on their shorts. Yeah. So then you guys switch. So what they're doing is they either want you or they want the other guy that switched beside the guy. So they want to compare you and then they can move you around. So they take the best guy who they think is like, you know, the very best guy, and they're going to put him probably in the middle. And then they're going to put the second best guy and they're going to put him to the one side of him. And then the third best guy to the other side of him.
That's how they kind of process.
That's how they move you around. So then, you know, if you're in the middle, when they start moving you around and they know that you're in the middle because it's 5, right? So you got 2 on each side, 1 guy in the middle. So you know, if you're the middle guy, you're doing good.
Yeah,
right?
you are.
I was bang in the middle. So I was like, yes, you know, and they were moving guys around and I never moved once. And and then what they're doing, they're trying to compare that guy beside me because I had 2 guys beside me, but there's still 2 guys that are on the very outside. Yeah. So they switched those guys with the inner guys. So at one point, I'd always had a new person. They put everyone beside me, either to my right or to my left. And then, so they do that. That takes about 10, 15 minutes. And then they'll have like a muscle off or whatever. So then you hit every pose that you want. So then you walk to the front of the stage because you want to make your presence felt, and you can, you know, hit most muscular or whatever. And if you see someone you think is like going to give you a run for your money, who might be that maybe the judges think are bigger than you watch what he does. And if he pulls, you know, like a side try pose, then you go up there and you hit that side try pose and you do the exact same as him. Oh. But you stand a couple inches closer if you can, even in front of him, so you look bigger to the, you know, because you're a bit closer. So. Yeah. And then and it gets a little bit like, you know, pushy, shovey, not crazy, but I mean, you're there not to lose. I mean, you put your body through hell for over a year at that point, at least, and some people have been training for 5 years to do a show, right? So, and that's your limelight, that's your morning show. That's when 90% of the judging is done. So yeah, I did that, and then I went to the back, and I knew I was doing good. And then the next division to you know, because they got lots of divisions. The next division was my division again, the second division. So I was like, I literally come out of the back, and I walked straight into line again. And then it was, I mean, literally, I threw a towel on kind of like over me, and I pulled my shorts off, and I put a different pair of shorts on because I had a different number and a different pair of shorts for the other division I was competing in. And then, yeah, so I threw on those shorts and that number, and then up there and did my T-walk again with all my poses, went to the back of the stage, and then they
Did you get any of those jelly things in there again? Or like, are you starting
I think I did. I think I actually had them stashed in the steps. Now that you said that, I definitely did. I'm not sure if that's cheating or not. But so yeah, there was however many, there's like 20 of us or whatever. So we went up there and did all our T-walks, and we walked to the back of the stage, and they called the first guy. It's not me. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, I got called first on the other one. We're doing okay. And like, I better make top 5, man. You know, and like second name, Jason Shaw, you know, number 29, whatever. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, here we go.
So here we go again, right? So they cycled us around, and I was second from the middle. On that time, I was like just one to the right. And so I knew I was doing good again. And then, yeah, that was it. We walked off the stage, and then I think there's about like a 2 or 3 or 4 hour break, something like that. And then they do like an afternoon show. So you come out, and it's like a repeat. You come out, you do all
you gotta do it all over again.
You got to do it all over again. And what they're doing is the judges have pretty well made up their minds completely. But, excuse me, what they're doing is they want to make sure they didn't like they want to make any last minute adjustments. So they'll have written down like their top 5, like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they'll do the show again in the afternoon. And that's when a lot of more people actually show up, because it's not so early in the morning. And then sometimes the crowd is bigger because you don't have to get up at, you know, so early in the morning to go down to Vancouver, watch a show. So the evening or afternoon show, we'll call it, has more crowd in it. But really most of the deciding has already been done at that point. So it's the same thing. You come out, you do your T-walk, you go to the back. They call the top 5. It's 99% of the time the same top 5. They move you around, do your thing, and then they're okay. And then there's no muscle off on that one. I think that you just kind of do your poses or whatever, and then you're all gone.
How much emphasis would you want to make sure that you're able to follow up with the performance you had earlier?
It's really important. A lot of people, they slack off in the afternoon. They're like, oh, well, 90% of the judging is done, and then they start like kind of cheating and eating a little bit of pizza. And like, dude, you all like, like if it's your first show and like you're not going to know any better maybe unless someone is like kind of guiding, like I seen a few guys go to the back and they had a pizza waiting. They start like smashing pizza. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're just like, oh yeah, well, most of the judging is done anyway. I'm like, well, dude, if you get bloated now, which you probably will because you've been kicking the shit out of your body for the last 7 days, if you're doing a proper cut, you're going to go up there this afternoon and you're going to look bloated, and you might go from number 2 to number 5. They might even throw you in the back and call another guy forward. Like, you've come this far now, wait 3 more hours, 4 more hours, do the second show, and then eat your face off tonight. But I seen it. Like, I mean, but yeah, so we did the evening show, and first division, I won. I got first.
Hey.
So yeah, I was like super stoked. And then the second division, I got second. So I got first and second.
Wow. So what's the difference in divisions? Is it?
It was weight.
It's weight. Okay.
Yeah.
And the higher weight class.
So I competed in a bigger weight class. So and so the divisions I did, I shouldn't just say weight, it's overall size. So I did the 2 divisions I did was fitness model and muscle model. So fitness model is like not as much based on size, it's more on like tone and your what's the word? Like your marketability as like to be a fitness model. Like, so you're not jacked, but you're like in really good shape, and you have like, you're a decent looking person, and your hair is done nice and all these things, right? You're a marketable fitness model. And then the other division I did was muscle model. So it's the same idea as fitness model, but it's just bigger. Like, you're just a bigger person. And I kind of was like falling in between them both. And I felt like I could hit enough poses hard enough that I could really emphasize my size into the muscle model, and I could fit in with those guys still. But if I didn't flex too hard or go, too crazy in the fitness model, I would still kind of skip under as a really big fitness model. And I did. I nailed it both, man. Like,
that's tactical.
And the president of the association was there, and he came up to me after, in the couple hours after the show, and because I had both of my medals on me. So it's pretty, I was like walking around the hotel, getting my drink on, and I'm feeling good now, and you could just hear when I was walking around, you could hear these gold medals banging off each other. Cause I guess, a gold and a silver banging off each other. Cause I had, had first and a second. So I was feeling pretty good about that jingle jangle walking around. And yeah, Paul Dillette came up to me and he was just like, you know, you really hit it. And I recognize you from last year. And yada. And he's like, how much mass did you put on? So the first year I was 155 when I started and did 174. And when I started my water cut for the show on that Sunday, I was 208.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the second year was like,
Holy.
second year. So I'm a pretty transparent person. So when I competed for the second show, I used a small amount of oral steroid as Anavar. It's mostly used in athletes like swimmers and stuff. It's to help, you know, build lean muscle mass. And a lot of people are like, oh, you should do all these other crazy steroids. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm just like not a big steroid guy, you know, so I'm going to stick with like this relatively mild. It's one the swimmers use a lot. And it's, I mean, the people who are like all about like being 100% natural, like who would listen to this and be like, "I'm fucking guy, you know, you steroids." And it's like, okay, well, yeah. But I mean, was I out there like injecting myself with like these crazy ass drugs?
Yeah,
like I wasn't, you know,
people
like
use creatine and a lot of other things.
Yeah. Now they use, I mean, yeah, I mean, what, at the end of the day, it wasn't drug free. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to like sit here and say that I was, because I mean, no matter how little that I did use, which I did, and I guess I'm a transparent person. I don't need to tell anybody what I did, but I'm just a transparent person. I used a very small dose of Anavar, and that was what I used. And
what is Anavar? I'm not even. It's a pill though.
It's a pill. It's an oral. Yeah, and it can be hard on your body, especially if you take like a lot of it. You're on it for a long time. It can have long-term effects on you that are not good. But I was just scared of needles and stuff, right? So I'm just like, I'm not going to take all these crazy steroids. But yeah, so like that the president asked me of that Paul Dillette, and he's like, "What did you use?" I was like, I said I used a little bit of Anavar. He's like, Anavar is like I used that for cutting back in the day, and I was like, yeah. He's just like, I could turn you into a monster, and I'm like, yeah, I've heard that
I
from
can imagine.
Yeah, I'm like, I
can imagine.
You just start sticking myself, but yeah, no. So that was. I mean,
you know, that's a nasty road. I don't think anybody gets out of that unscathed.
I mean, when you start messing with
hormones,
there's not many. Like, I mean, a lot of these successful bodybuilders are like, they're either not with us or they're not looking too good right now. So I think you gotta be careful if you're gonna. I mean, I've been in a strong advocate. It's one of my biggest like slogans in my life is like everything in moderation, man. If you overdo anything, it can be harmful. But if you use, you know, things in moderation, I think you're fine. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, I mean, like alcohol is not good for you, you know, at all. Like it's anyone who thinks otherwise is retarded. But at the end of the day, like everything in moderation is fine. Like now, I mean, like, so I took 9 years. It was almost, no, I guess, well, 2015 is, no, it was 2014 was my second show. Sorry. So 2013, my first one. So I took off from 2014, July 31st, I think was the show. At most I hit the gym 12 times between then and about 2 months ago. That's all. I didn't have a goal. So
you did the 2 shows and then that was it?
I did the 2 shows. I won and I reached my goal and I didn't set another one. And it was one of the worst things I ever did for myself because I didn't know what to do. I'm like, well, I competed and I won now and I don't have the drive. So that was it.
Wow.
And for me, I just started getting back into it in the last 2 months or whatever it's been because mostly strength. Like I don't miss being like really big. The problem with being really big, I'm only 5'9", you know, so I was like 208 pounds before my cut. I probably roll on the stage about like 193. But when whether you're fat or you're carrying extra muscle mass, it's still a rob of blood. And when you rob yourself of the blood, you rob yourself of cardio performance. So after that show that I did, I went into hunting season. And I mean, I'm like a very, very avid hunter. So I was bagged everywhere I went, man. I was just
fatigued for sure.
People are like, look at you, man. I don't know why you're so tired right now. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Look at me. I'm like 200 pounds now. You know, and I'm like, oh, like my legs are normally this big around. Now they're this big around, and my heart has not grown, and the amount of blood in my lungs have not gotten bigger. So I was just wiped out. So the reason why I got back in the gym where I was going with that is not because I want to be like 200 and some pounds again. I just want my strength back. I miss having that power.
The nice balance.
It was, yeah. I mean, it's just a great feeling to be able to, because I'm always doing stuff outside. Like I'm hunting and I'm guiding, or I'm like working on the acreage. I'm doing something, and being able to pick up like a tractor tire with a rim on it and throw in the box of my truck, you know, when it's 275 pounds. Is a nice feeling. Yeah. You know, when I'm sitting there squealing like a little girl and have two people come over to my neighbors to help me load a tractor trailer, I'm like, I remember back in the day, I could just throw this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I miss that, you know, like I'm not getting younger, and I'm like, if I don't nip this in the butt now and get some of my strength back now, like when I'm in my mid 40s, it's going to, or like every year that passes, you just, it's harder to get to win that back. Yeah. And it's never too late to start. But the thing is, if I procrastinate until I'm 46 years old and 10 years from now, like it's going to take me forever to try to get back into good shape. And I know that like I still have a little bit of youth on my side. So I'm like, you know what? In the last couple of months, I'm like, I'm not happy with where I'm at with my strength. And it's mental too. I mean, like for me, like my mental health wasn't bad, but it wasn't the best. And you feel better. For me, I feel better when I'm exercising, going to the gym.
Yeah, the mental clarity does go along with it, doesn't it?
And seasonal depression too, right? Like people talk about seasonal. My doctor, you know, you go see your doctor for whatever, and he'll be like, "Oh, how are you feeling these days?" And I come, you know, whatever, I'm fine, yada yada. And like, do you want to take a pill for seasonal depression? I'm like, I didn't think I was depressed, but no, I don't have it. And not that I took the pill or I want the pill, but now that I'm more aware of like this seasonal depression, you know, I hear about it. As soon as spring started here in the last like few months, all of a sudden I was like, you start feeling a little better about yourself. And I also was like, I'm like, you know, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to, you know, that extra energy and that extra, you know, little boost I've been feeling mentally, and I'm going to apply it to going to the gym, because going to the gym until you really get into swing of things for the first few like month or two, depending on your age, that's not the fun part. Like you got to get over like this hump. Yeah. You know what I mean? I try to tell that to guys all the time. And I knew I was feeling better with this, you know, like spring is in the air and there's sunshine and it's warm. And I'm like, I'm just going to take that extra free fuel and I'm going to apply it in the gym. And I'm going to start going back to the gym. And now that I've moved back to Dawson, because I moved away for about 8 years, and my buddy Jarrett has now in the meantime opened his own gym. It's just like, I want to support Jarrett, and I get to see my old lifting buddies and stuff. So I go back to the gym, and I was able to apply that extra energy from the seasonal depression lifting, or however you want to call it. And it's been a really great thing for me. I put on in 2 months. I mean, I put on just about 10 pounds of lean mass again. And there's people like, holy crap, like, are you juicing? You know, and I'm like, no, I'm just
a little bit of muscle memory.
Muscle memory is a huge thing, man. I look stronger than I am. I mean, I want the strength more than anything, but it feels good, you know, that to, put on, 10, 11 pounds in 2 months. And it's just like, it's all mental. Yeah. And I'm just really happy that I was, thank my dad for those genes he passed on, because, most people, they take 9 years off in the gym and they go back for 2 months. You might gain a pound or two, back. But
there's a lot of it that to be said about mental fortitude also. Mm-hmm. There is definitely a thing you're talking about. We touched on it earlier, and I don't mind repeating it, because I think there's a lot of value in actually touching on what we were talking about earlier, as far as the ability to be able to get back into the gym, or even starting from scratch. And I did. I've never gotten into the whole powerlifting thing, but the one thing when I was younger in my teens, I was the opposite. I was very, very tall and like obnoxiously skinny, like the knock knee, just ribs. And I'm telling you, I tried everything under the sun to gain weight. Mm-hmm. I did the powder, I did everything. I couldn't gain weight for nothing. Yeah. And then it was like a shift. Everyone's like, well, you got to be careful, because when you hit your 30s, and I'm like, no, I'm not that guy. Really, mm-hmm. I'm not that guy. And it turned out to be where I was. So I got to a point, though, where I was so concerned that I had gained so much weight. Like you said, I was like, something had to change. And I talked to a buddy, and he got me on the keto diet. Yeah. The thing with me on the keto diet, though, and even oddly enough, and it's weird how things just kind of come around on a guy, but podcasting, for example, I couldn't stand the word podcast when I first found out about it. Now look what I'm doing. And then diets, I never really liked them. I never liked how anybody used them as a crutch or manipulated or anything like that. But I got to a point where a buddy of mine that I actually respect a lot started in on this whole keto thing. And I was like, why you? Why do you have to be like that now? Yeah. But he touched on some stuff that kind of caught my attention. And I went, you know what? I got to figure it out because I'm at a point where something has to happen. Yeah. And I think everybody gets to a point in their life where something has to happen. And I was like, if I can't figure out what that something is now, where I still have, part of my youth and my health in particular, and I've got excuses as to why, or I'll do it when and this and whatever, then what happens when you get to a point where you have no choice and the doctor's saying, well, you know what, you're either going to take these pills or you're going to end up being just, the way it is. Bedridden. And that's, and then you lose that whole mobility. Like there's a lot about health and mobility in between, that progression to where, things are too far. Yeah. So I figured it out, and within 3 months, and this isn't obviously a healthy way. I can relate when you're talking about going all in, because I think I'm that way, and I think a lot of people are that way in some ways, where I was like, okay, I'm going to try this, but I don't want to leave any crumbs on the table as far as excuses. Yeah. And I went from 260, and then I went 3 months later, I was 175.
Man, that is a drop.
And no stretch marks, all healthy, feeling like a bloody $1 million. But I went like, I laser focused. There was
setting goals. We're talking like mental is a huge thing. And that was another part of the reason why, like, I think that for me, for competing, when I was able to put on that much mass, because we were talking earlier about like, what do you think about doing your reps? Like, what's your mental focus? And once you have a goal in your mind, like setting goals is like, you look at some of those successful people that we have around us today, like in the world, and they all have like everyone will tell you they have set goals. And it's like yourself, like you probably had a goal of like, I wanted to be a certain weight, or I wanted to look a certain way, or I wanted to fit these certain clothes. And when you set a goal, like, man, like what your mind can drive your body to do is crazy. If you just go in there with no goal, no focus, and it's just like, you're kind of lost, so yeah. You need to set a goal,
and you need support. Like the guy that was telling me a little bit about keto, the thing that we really did touch on, and you touched on also, is that there's different body types. Mm-hmm. The thing that saved my ass a few times, though, in that is that a guy has to make sure that he remembers that this is actually for the goal of health.
That's right.
And so when you compromise that, then you're not really actually achieving much. And there was a couple of times, and I'll tell this story I have in the past, but there's a couple of examples I'd like to try and show on that. One is where when you're going keto and you're removing pretty much all the sugar, and you're switching from carbs to ketones, mm-hmm. and you're trying to get your pancreas to go from producing insulin to ketones, and you're depleting your system from sugar and glycogen in your muscle and your bloodstream. You do not exercise, because your body can't multitask, and you need to be able to go into ketosis a healthy way. And I know there's dirty keto and different versions, and I will say that's bullshit, because I used to walk a lot, and I got to a point where I was walking very early in trying to do this whole the switching over thing. And I got to the back of the property, I'm in a quarter, and I lost all energy, and I was like, oh, I'll just muscle it out back home. And then I lost so much energy that I was like, I got to call the wife. She's got to come get me. I can't even, like, I'm not going to be able to make it back. I was like at a point where I was like, oh no, I'm fucked. Like, this is no good. I'm actually at a point where this is scary. And eventually I made it back home, but I'm telling you, it took some real determination. I called Buddy. I'm like, this is not good. What is happening? Like, and so we had this conversation. He said, you don't exercise. You cannot exercise.
That is wild, man.
But then all of a sudden, it was like I woke up one morning, I kept on with it, and I got like real tight shoulder, like everything started cramping. I called him, what the fuck's going on? I'm dying here. And he's like, just, you got to get more salt in the system. Lots of salt. Get the salt, get the electrolytes, get the water. You got to. So I did, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah. And then I started sleeping like a motherfucker. And I was like, I quit snoring, and even my hair everything started coming together. And then he's like, you're in ketosis. Now's the time to exercise. He says, you got all that extra energy. It's switched over. And he goes, don't overdo it. Bulk up later, maybe if you want, but go burn that energy off. And so that's what I would do. And it just melted. And I got so into it to where I went on a fast. And I was working out at the same time, and I went just over 3 weeks without eating a damn thing as a water diet. And I just made sure my trace minerals and my I stayed hydrated. My electrolytes were a real big deal. I made sure those were all dialed in. And if I started, if I got constipated, I'd call them, and I had somebody helping me through it to make sure that I wasn't going to end up with, organ damage, or some real issues there. And I had someone who was fairly knowledgeable in it. And so we navigated through it, and I broke my fast after, it was a little over 3 weeks, because I was scared. I was like, if I don't eat.
That is wild.
And it took me, I had to break it proper. So the wife has chicken broth, and she'd make a broth, 3 or 4 days, and just boil and render everything down. And then I would have that to start with. And then I would introduce like high constant, like pure fat pretty much, and break my fast. And it was wild. But like my mental clarity was like, I'm like, man, this is great. I don't have to fuck around with eating. And I felt so sharp, but I learned a lot in that process. I don't recommend it for everybody. And I do recommend, if they're going to do it, to make sure it's all about the health end of things, and education does go a long ways. It takes the fear out of a lot of things, and it takes the risk. I think it mitigates it into where it should be good. But it's the mental tenacity. I maintained that for a year, and then like the alcohol, I just lost it. I thought I could manage it, but it's a lifestyle. It's a legit lifestyle change. Sugars and carbs, it's a real deal. It's an addiction. It's no joke. It's tough. I've been wanting to get into it, but I lost all of that. Now I'm going, son of a bitch. But I know when I get into it, that is almost just as bad, because if a guy doesn't watch it, you can get what becomes so hard and a hurdle at the beginning to commit to. Once you get into it, it's almost just as bad to try and make sure you don't fixate on it.
Yeah.
And overdo it in the other direction, right? And I probably did honestly overdo it in probably some areas there. And a lot of people are probably just swearing at their radio right now over that story. But at the end of the day, I think, it boils down to diet, really, and look at the effects things have. People say McDonald's isn't a big deal, but then they're going to rely on a Tylenol pill the size of a freaking pea to solve all their problems. Like, look at how much of an impact that has just on dietary requirements. It is a big deal.
It is, yeah. No, well, you're absolutely right. And it's, what I was saying earlier too, and I strongly believe it, like everything in moderation. You can overdo anything, even the most healthy thing. If you overdo the most healthy thing, well, it's going to have a reverse effect, right? It's like, going as hard as I did in the gym, like that, I have long-term effects, and that wasn't moderate at all. And, my body is like, I've got problems with, muscles and discs and stuff, because I lifted so heavy, so long with no breaks, and it wasn't like over years and years. I was talking 2 a days for 12 months and lifting heavy every single day. Like I never lifted lightweight. It was always like, 3 sets, 6 to 8 reps, how heavy as you can. And after like that breaks down your body. It really does.
Well, it's skeletal now.
Yep.
All that pressure and tension. So does that, you're mentioning the long-term effects. So is there issues? Have you noticed, I guess, long-term effects because of that?
Yeah, I mean, just like my back is like, it's my back, my neck, and my shoulders, like my upper back, I should say, my neck and my shoulders are never right. Like I've had, chiro lots and physiotherapists and, RMTs tried working on me, and I'll be good for a while, and then I'll be in pain for a while, but I just endure it.
Have you tried different things like acupuncture or
So the
like, I don't
things
know,
that I
like
have
different-
left are like the suction cup thing. I don't know what the proper term is. Someone's probably just like, you idiot right now. Like,
I love it. Let's get them to engage a bit more.
That's right. Yeah. So the suction cups thing and acupuncture are the only two that I haven't.
Oh, you
done
tried
yet.
acupuncture?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
No, the suction
that's
cups
scary.
and acupuncture
Oh.
I haven't.
Oh, you've tried everything else.
I've tried
Those
everything.
are two things you
The
haven't
only
tried.
Two things I haven't tried.
Holy shit!
I've tried.
So what if?
Like I said, like chiro and massage and certain kinds of like
So
herbs
soft tissue
and like certain stretches and yoga and where you hang yourself upside down off one of those machines. You think I know being a fitness guy, but whatever they call them, like
Oh, traction. I know that's not the proper term, but I know what you're taking. It takes pressure off of the skeleton, your spine.
The word's just like traction. Whatever.
Yeah, there is the word traction's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, so I can't think of. I mean, all the things I've tried over the last 8-9 years to try to straighten my body out, but it's. I mean, no regrets. Whatever, we had fun, but. That's part of the reason why probably now, like I say, I'm a strong advocate and like everything in moderation, because I know my body and I know like everyone's body's built a bit different, but it's pretty easy to see.
You don't hit the lines. You don't know how to navigate between them. I mean, you got to figure it all out, man.
100%. That's a really good term, because that's just the way it is. I mean, you can overdo anything. It's just, like alcohol, like for me, like I can have a couple of beers and I'm good. But, if I have a runaway, which I do still once in a while, I'm still human. And honestly, like a week ago, I had a runaway, and they're very few and far between, once every year, maybe twice a year.
Ooh, I'm going to have to be maybe one of those guys you have a runaway with. I feel like that's probably a requirement.
Oh man. I tell you, but the next day, like I have the worst hangovers. Like we had like some drinks on last Wednesday. So I guess it was a week ago, and I could not get out of bed on Thursday. I mean, I was sick to my stomach. I mean, there was nothing left, and I was trying to still get down like Gatorade and crackers at 5 o'clock in the evening on Thursday. And my wife is like, "You have the worst hangovers. Like you're a mess." Like, so everything in moderation. I mean, you can overdo exercise. You can overdo good things and bad things.
There's something I could about the hangover thing. This it hasn't happened in a while, but my wife knows there's different essential oils that you can get. And it's very common. There's another brain fart, but I'm going to have to ask her about it. But this one time I had a hangover, and I woke up and I knew it was a 3-day hangover. I knew it. Like it was, you just have that feeling where you're like, man, I'm okay right now, but later today, this is going to be probably something I wish I'm going to die over. Right?
Yeah.
And then I had a buddy coming over that I hadn't seen in a long time, many, many years. And I was like, so I'm trying to cancel, but he's showing up. And so the wife got me a bath, and she put this oil in there. And it took everything just to be able to get into the bath. And I was soaking in there for about a half hour, and I felt a little better, but I can actually move and blink without it hurting. And, I could take a deep breath without feeling I was going to get sick.
Yeah.
It was this oil that just kind of pulls the toxins out. And the water looked like it was not good. It was not good water. It started out clear, and it ended up just like a brown, milky look. It's fucking horrible. But then about an hour later, after getting out of that bath, I started, okay, I feel good. I can actually move and walk, and my head was, not quite as foggy.
Yeah.
And about a half hour after that, they were roasting hot dogs, and I was able to eat.
No kidding.
Yeah, man. Like there are little things. There's something about oils and just natural organic stuff that are no joke. I mean, I'm starting to really realize that there's a little bit more to
the natural herbs.
Yeah, absolutely. Certain things. We're at a point now where I want to. How are you feeling? You want to?
Feeling good. feel like I haven't been here in a year.
You want to get into hunting?
Yeah,
Yeah, tackle that one?
Yeah, I mean, we can go on for days or we can go on for hours.
Let's touch the hunting, because you've just come back from a hell of a trip.
Yeah.
And you got into the hunting end of things, and I'm assuming this is after you got out of bodybuilding.
Yeah, I mean, I hunted hard since I was a kid. And the only time that hunting has ever been sidelined was my bodybuilding career. That's the only thing that's ever sidelined the hunting thing, to be honest with you.
So even growing up, like, this is part of something that your family, your dad...
Not to the point that I do it. I mean, for me, like, we grew up, like, we didn't have a lot of money, you know, like, we weren't like broke, but I mean, we didn't have a lot of extra money, you know, and pretty well, if we didn't get a moose in the fall, then it was really hard for us to afford just to buy meat, you know, so we really depended on getting a moose. And from the time that I was like 5 or 6 years old until I was like 13, I think that my dad only got like one moose, like, in those years, you know, so we were always, you know, like, you know, getting meat from grandma and grandpa, or, you know, one of my aunts or uncles or whatever, because they got a moose that year. And I was just, it kind of like, again, being like the youngest brother, and I like had a point to prove, you know, and I was like, I can hunt, like, I can understand like how these animals like work, you know. And we would just, I mean, we weren't like hardcore, like, gas was cheap back then, so we would drive these logging roads and, you know, just road hunt and take the odd little walk, just, you know, looking to put a moose in the freezer type thing. And once I got to I think I was 14, I wanted to like get a moose bad, and I was old enough to, you know, have my own tag and all that stuff. So I knew a lot of area from hunting with my dad, you know, from driving, and I just like knew where the new logging slashes were and all the stuff. And I would just be like, just drop me off and just like drive over to this road and just do your little road hunt, and I'm going to walk, you know, and I'll meet you on the other side, you know, and like, I know that there's a moose in here. And as soon as I was given that freedom to, you know, think on my own and do my own, I mean, it was opening day of moose season. I was 14 years old, and I had a bull down a half an hour into daylight. And
wow.
Yeah, it was like,
Nice.
I think I found what I was put on this world to be, man, as a hunter. So yeah, we got everyone tagged out that fall. It was just like, I hunted with my grandpa. It's just like, wow, you guys did good. And yeah, I think we got like 6 moose in the first like 2 weeks of season. I just went with every aunt and every uncle every time I went out with them.
Huh? Wow.
And they would just ask me like, where do you think we should go? And this is like back in the day when like One Island Lake used to actually be like One Island Lake, and it was hard to get to, you know, this is long before the oil field blew everything up like they have. And we would just, I mean, we would, you know, road hunt to an area, and I could just tell like, yeah, there's this is a moosey area, you know, type thing. And I'd just be watching for tracks and ditches and stuff. And okay, yeah, there seems to be some moose in here. So I'd watch for a cut line, and yeah, okay, let's stop here. And I can see that cut line goes up over there, and there's an old logging slash. I can see kind of the tops of the trees are down lower. So I just self-learned, man, self-taught. I just had this natural ability to figure out how to get at the game, how to find them. And once I figured out how to find them, I was good at how to find them. So then I got really good at being able to put them down, because I had so many unsuccessful stalks, because I had a lot of stalks, because I was able to find the game. So I figured out quickly, you know, the do's and don'ts with wind and all the other stuff that comes with it, and, you know, the factors that they're involved with, you know, having a successful stalk. And I mean, if you're rifle hunting, it's not like you got to stalk that close. And so, I mean, that's how it really started for me. It was, no one else in my family is obsessed like I am. And this has become like my whole lifestyle, is, you know, my career's been built around it. And I did my first little, like, you know, quote unquote guiding gig when I was 15 or 16. I had like an old high school girlfriend, her aunt and uncle, her 2 uncles were coming up to the Peace Country there from southern BC, and they wanted to do some mule deer hunting. And they knew that their niece's, you know, little boyfriend knew how to find big deer already, and I was already having this reputation at 15. So yeah, they asked if I could, you know, take them out. And I asked my mom and dad, like, you know, they called like, yeah, we want to see, you know, we're Chantel's, like, you know, uncles, and want to see if Jason could take us hunting. Mom and dad are like, well, no, he's in school, like, he can't leave school, right?
Take him out.
And they're like, well, we're from southern BC, and you do a lot of salmon fishing, and we wanted to see if, you know, we could give you guys, you know, like a a bunch of salmon, and then he could just, help us, show us some areas. Mom and dad are like, oh yeah, you should have said something. Yeah. And that was it. Yeah. They came over and they gave him like half a dozen nice big salmon, all frozen. And I went on hunting, took him out into that ground birch area. And we slammed like a 190 something muley and a 200-inch muley. And I was 15. Like I was like, not like legally or quote unquote actually officially guiding, but I was just showing these guys some good spots,
different areas.
Yeah, I gave my mom and dad some salmon, and it was fair, and yada yada, and yeah, that was my first little kind of, people were like, all my friends and family were like, man, this is you should do this, So I mean, I used to ride my bike. I was again 15 because I didn't have my driver's license. And I would get on my mountain bike, and I would mountain bike on Friday after school, and I would ride all the way out of town up to like Bear Mountain, like a couple hour mountain bike ride. And I would take like a little tent and a backpack and everything. And I would park my bike, and I would just hike cut lines, pre-season scouting, and I would come back on Sunday night before school. I'd be gone for the week, and mom and dad, they're just like, no, he's gone out into the bush somewhere. You couldn't hold me back. I mean, it was just like, either they can just let me go and know where I'm going, or I'm just going to like run away and they're not going to know where I went. So they're like, okay, well, whatever.
Like Bear Mountain, you're talking where the ski hill is?
Yeah. And behind like where the ski hill, there's a whole bunch of like old like forest recreation roads and stuff back there. Yeah. You can go all the way as far as like One Island Lake through like Tommy Lake and stuff. So yeah, I would do that. And then I would also, I would ride my mountain bike in the wintertime. And I was 14, 15. I'd ride it out to the grain elevators just outside of Dawson in January when some of the deer are starting to shed, and I would climb on top of the rail cars, and I would sit there and I'd watch the deer come in at night under the lights, and they would feed, and I'd wait for them to drop their antlers like for shedding season, and I would sit there until 3 or 4 in the morning, and then I would climb off and get on my mountain bike and then ride all the way back. And sometimes mom and dad would come and pick me up, because it was, it'd be 30 below sometimes. I'd be sitting out there all just bundled up, sitting on top of a rail car, looking at mule deer underneath me, just waiting for their antlers to drop.
Really?
Oh yeah, I was
crazy.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I was always doing something in the woods, and so I mean, that's how it all started. And then I hunted all over as much as I could, and then once I was legally allowed to hunt on my own, then there was no holds barred. I mean, I went sheep hunting. I was 18, and I had like same old girlfriend from high school. Her dad told me a spot. He's like, we used to go hunting here. I haven't been there in 20 years. I'll draw you a map. I have no idea if there's sheep there still, but you're free to go and check it out if you want. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. Yeah. And I had no idea. It was like, never sheep hunted, never knew anyone that sheep hunted. Didn't know any of this stuff. Never mountain hunted like that. So, I mean, I did as much research as I could and figured out what to do. He gave me this map, and I drove up north, got on my grandfather's quad, lent me this quad. I quadded in as far as I could go, and then I, slept under a tarp at the quad, got up the next morning and bundled up, hiked up the mountain, and got snowed and rained on. It was July 27th, so
snow day. I mean, only here in the Peace region, like, July was snow,
and I had no idea what to expect, and I didn't have rain gear because I didn't have the money for it. So I had a garbage bag I had put over like a poncho over my backpack, and then I had a garbage bag over top of me for a poncho. Wow. And then I hiked up the mountain while getting snow and rain on me like that. And I remember I got to the top and I was so wet and cold. I'm like, I have to set my tent up, and I'm almost hypothermic now. And I remember trying to put the poles in the pins, and I couldn't feel my fingers to line up the pins in the holes. And I was like, I might be in some serious trouble right now. Like, this is not good. I'm solo in the mountains. No one, like, I'm so far from anywhere. And I remember I got the tent together finally, and I was like I couldn't use my fingers. It was so difficult. And I got the tent together. I got the rainfly on, and I was smart enough. I got in the tent, and then the little vestibule part, I just took off all my clothes, got right naked. And then I got in my sleeping bag naked, and what I did is I had a little emergency blanket. It was like a little tin ones,
Yeah.
So I took that out, and I opened my sleeping bag all the way up like a blanket, and then I opened up the emergency blanket and I put it inside there, and then I zipped it together, and then I
like
crawled,
a taco.
exactly,
You just went inside,
and then I crawled in there. So I was in the emergency blanket in the sleeping bag, and I had got all my wet clothes off, and I remember like pulled the top of my sleeping bag over my head to get use my breath, and I was like, either I'm going to die of hypothermia or I'm going to wake it up, and I don't know what's going to happen. But it is what it is at this point, you know, like you're at the mercy of the mountain. I had no idea, scared, you know, I was like, I thought I was probably not going to make her. Cause I mean, my whole body was cold. I mean, like I've never been, I've been that cold since, but very few and far between, where like, no matter where you touched, like you could touch like your armpit or like your crotch. And even that was freezing cold. Like you had no warm parts left in your body, you know? And I woke up 4 hours later, middle of the afternoon, or like, you know, late afternoon, just sweating to death, you know, and the sun's out and there's no snow. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like just, oh, wow, that's really something. Like, what am I doing up here? So I scouted for sheep because the opening day is August 1st and it's the 27th of July. And they're nice and early, because I'd never even seen a sheep at this point, other than like driving through Jasper, like bighorns, not even thin horns. So, I scouted, you know, for 4 days or like 3.5 days, I guess, all the way till July 31st. And I hadn't seen one sheep.
Oh, shit.
But I didn't want to go too far deep into this mountain pass, because Dan told me, like, if you go in too deep too early and you spook the sheep, they'll leave. Yeah. That's it. Your hunt is over. Like a goat, if you spook them, they'll run around the mountain. They'll come back again. You just keep chasing around the same mountain. You spook a sheep, he's down and he's out. Like, that's it.
Really?
And sometimes, I mean, they'll come back, but sometimes it's like 2-3 weeks. Sometimes they'll be in the rut. Like they're different, right? So I didn't want to push my luck. I mean, I was spotting caribou and grizzly bears and all kinds of stuff, but I couldn't spot a sheep. And I'm like, I was like getting really frustrated. And I'm like ready to leave the mountain. It's not even season yet, because I'm like, I'm not seeing any sheep. Like maybe they're, you know, Dan did say it's been 20 years since he's here. There must not be any sheep. Is what it is. I'm going to stick it out. Well, I'm going to hike the rest of the way into like this mountain pass on opening morning, and maybe I'll find one. And I got up an hour before daylight and, you know, brushed my teeth and had a little snack and threw my day pack on, or I guess it was my full pack, but I just had it, you know, just a couple things in it. And I was walking by like very, very dawn, and about an hour and a half into the hike, I come over the crest of the hill and there was like 27 rams standing there.
Wow.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Like, whoa. I remember I instantly got down and I looked over at those rams, and they were sick, but they were ranging in, because there's that many sheep, they were between 620 and 700 yards. And that one small ram I call banana head, because they look like their horns as big as a banana, that's all. And so like an immature ram, right? And he spotted me, man, at that distance. These things have like 40 power vision. It's unbelievable, man. They're unparalleled. Like their eyesight is just crazy.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I dropped and got like, you know, like in a prone position, and I threw my binoculars up, and I seen this one ram stood up right away, and he's like looking my way, and his head's kind of cocked. And I can see this like barely, even with my binoculars, let alone my spotter yet. And I'm like, I think that ram seen me. There's no way. Because when I seen, like, I come over the crest of the hill, and like I seen like what just looked out of place in the green grass, because they weren't in the rock, they were like in this grass. And I threw my binos up, and I could see that it was sheep. So when I dropped down and I got looking at him again, like I seen this one pop up and look my way and kind of cock his head, and I'm like, there's no way. So I'm watching the sheep, and I'm laying down, I'm not moving, and he starts walking toward me, and I'm like curious. I'm like, there's no way. So he's now like coming in, looking my way, and I'm like, I'm not in denial. Like, that sheep seen me, and he's coming to check me out. So I like stayed on my belly, and I like kind of like army crawled like backwards off this little ledge and off to it was when I came over the crest of the hill, it was like, if you could imagine like a horseshoe, and I was looking across from one side of the horseshoe to the other side. So in between us, it was like a nice long slopey, like in between a horseshoe, but behind me was like a straight cliff straight down. So I thought, well, I'm just going to shuffle backwards like 30, 40 feet. And then I'm going to like let myself slide off like this straight down ledge. There was about like an 8 or 9 foot ledge. And then there was like a little, or I should say 8 or 9 foot cliff, and then went to like a little ledge. And then off that ledge was like a 300 foot drop. Yeah. So I was just like, I got to get that little ledge. I got to get off the height of land so that ram will walk by me. So I did that. I backed all the way up, and I slowly shuffled down.
Well, so if he's on the other side of this horseshoe,
yeah, he's walking. He had to go. No, he didn't walk. He walked around the horseshoe. Like he went all the way around the horseshoe from one side of the horseshoe to the other. He like did the whole U shape.
Wow.
And then so I mean, it took a while. I mean, it took him probably like half an hour at least or whatever, right? And he's just clipping along doing this thing, walking. So I got down on this little ledge, and I'm like about like 10 feet below summit, we'll call it, where I was. And I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm like, I wonder how long I should wait, you know? And I'm
we can start wondering.
Yeah. And then I look up, and there's this one that scared the shit out of me. There's this sheep. His face is about like a foot from mine, and he's staring at me. It's that ram. And I'm just like, we like locked eyes, and I was just like, whoa. And then I froze, right? And I was like, don't move, don't move, don't move. And we're like, just like looking at it, like just staring. His nostrils are just like flaring. He's like, what is going on? And I'm like, I'm busted, so busted. I mean, I'm face to face with a sheep. Like, we're talking like a foot or two, man. Like,
it's not like you can run. That thing could just hop down.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on this ledge the size of this table, and then it's just like, it's like 8-9 feet up, and you're like on nice long flat ground, and then off the backside is like 300 feet down to your death. So all of a sudden, this ram, like, he just goes to like dart the other way. So I'm like, shit. So I reach down and go to grab my backpack. I look back up, and he did it on purpose to trick me because I just froze for so long. I look back up, and his face is right there again. And I'm like, oh, I fell for it. And then that time he bolted. But instead of going around the horseshoe like he did on the way in, he went straight down into like the valley of the horseshoe, like the middle of the horseshoe.
Yeah.
And when he got down there, instead of running back up there to warn his buddies, he just fucked right off out of there. And I'm like, it couldn't have worked any better. I was so lucky. But
that's freaking crazy.
Yeah. So I climb back up to where I can see across the horseshoe again, and all those rams are just chilling. And so I get my spot and scope out, and I'm, zooming right in. And at that time, I shouldn't say there was 27 rams there, but when I first seen them, I thought there was like a dozen. That was about how many I seen originally. So I seen this one ram that he was pretty heavy, like not real thick, but he had like really long horns, and they swept up really high, and they have to bridge the nose, like the bridge of the nose. They have to come over the bridge of the nose. So I got my gun all, set up. I had like my little bipod on the front. And then what I did is, it was such a far shot because I knew I couldn't get any closer. So the ram that I was looking at was 636 yards, and I'd never shot near that far before, but I knew that where to aim about with the gun at that time. So this is long before Huskamas and all this crazy fancy shit they have nowadays at Coeur d'Alene. So what I did is I stacked rocks up like almost like an Inukshuk to the point where it was like a tripod now under the stock, the butt stock of the gun. Yeah. So now it was like a full on tripod.
Awesome.
And then,
so a Inukshuk, just not to interrupt, but you're talking about a bipod. So you had the two legs coming down
off the front of the gun,
and then off the butt where you can put your cheek on the stock.
Yeah.
You were able to just stack some rocks up so that it would give it the stability to be able to make a shot.
In the mountains, it's like black shale, so it's just like normal shale, but it's thin like little pancakes, flat. Right? So the nice thing is you could take one rock out and put a different rock in, and it might be a couple millimeters difference, and a couple millimeters difference is a couple feet difference of where your crosshairs are on that ram 636 yards away. So I fine-tuned it, and it took me like a half an hour to build the perfect, but I had the setup where I could literally not even touch a gun, and I could just look through the scope, and the crosshairs were right on just that ram and not moving, obviously, because I'm not even touching the gun. So I had this crazy crosswind. Again, this is long before technology, but, this crosswind, technology and in a minute of angle to aim and yada, yada. I knew that you had the Coeur d'Alene guys in there. They can explain that stuff way better than me. But So I knew I had a strong wind from left to right, and that ram was bedded, and boom, he stood up. And I figured with the windage, this is a total Hail Mary. I'm like, if I aim where his ass is, the bullet was going to drift all the way from his ass to his front shoulder. That's what I think will happen. What the theory behind it, like the education behind it, zero. This is what I think I should do. So I aimed, I think that gun was shooting, I can't remember what it was. And maybe it was like, some guys will probably critique me when they hear this. Oh, I couldn't have been right. But I think it was 4 inches high at 100 yards. It was a 7mm. I was shooting pretty light load because I wanted to shoot far. So I figured I need to aim about a foot above where I wanted to hit. So I aimed a foot above his ass. So it was the weirdest thing because I knew I wanted to aim at his ass for the wind driftage or what, I said I knew, but I mean, this is a Hail Mary. I figured that was, So I'm like, if I aim at his ass, it's going to drift to the right for his front shoulder. But I know I need to aim high too because it's 636 yards. I think I was 4 inches high at 100. So I put the crosshairs a foot above the sheep's ass. And that is the weirdest feeling to have your crosshairs in the sky a foot above the sheep's ass and you're pulling the trigger.
Absolutely.
And it was like, well, it's like, it's like, now or never.
So, I mean, like what you're trying to explain for anybody who doesn't know what kind of shot that is at 600 yards across a valley where you don't know how strong that wind is going.
Yep.
And it's never always consistent. No. So you've got gusting winds where it's a bit of a variable. Mm-hmm. And for that length of distance, like 600 freaking yards. Was it straight level? Like were you?
It was straight level.
You weren't shooting up or down or anything?
It was straight level.
That's a hell of a shot. Like
it was a Hail Mary because, like you say,
a 7mm is a nice. So is 7mm typically a decent round as far as the lead weight? What size?
I think that I was shooting something light, like a 130. No, it was like a 130s, I think, or like something. It was it was so long ago. Maybe like I honestly don't remember. I'm gonna take a stab. It's between like 125 and 140 grains.
And you had this sighted in at 400?
I was 4 inches high at 100. And I don't know why exactly. What I was. I think so. Then I was at 200. I think I would have been. Oh man, I remember I had it written down.
Yeah. I mean, this is. But you had a pretty good
18 years ago too.
So but you knew the gun well enough to be able to have that feeling at 600 yards.
I had it figured out that I could, wherever I wanted to, I could just aim at the middle of the vitals up to like 400 yards or up to like 375 yards.
The hot spot.
Right and that was all I figured because that was all I practiced out to, right? I was never going to dream about taking a 600 yard poke at a ram.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I mean, and it was like, it was definitely, it wasn't like the most like ethical shot that I've made because of the fact that like I had never shot that far. So really you should never try the first time ever shooting that far on a live animal. Like, I mean, because if you wound it, I mean, like you're a dick. I mean, because of your ignorance and of trying a shot that you have no business trying. But I mean, try telling an 18-year-old that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do it. So yeah, I mean, I put that crosshairs a foot above his ass.
Yeah.
Took a deep breath, let out halfway, stopped my breath, and just started slowly pulling that trigger as slow as I could. And boom, the gun went off. All my rocks fell down. And I threw my binoculars up. And I had enough time when I threw my binoculars up to just in time hear the whack.
Really?
I hit that ram, and he dumped, and I hit him square in the middle of the shoulder.
Wow.
Yep.
Damn good
he
job.
He went down. I'm just like, man. I looked around like high-fiving nobody because I'm solo, And I'm like, no one's ever going to believe this. I'll be telling the story for years.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, I threw my backpack on, and I hiked over there, and I was like, I had... I don't know what, I think I just had a wind-up camera. I think because I mean, this is before they had iPhones. I think iPhones came out when I was like 21 or something, or 20 is right before the iPhone. So I don't know what I used to take pictures. I think I had just one of those Kodak wind-up.
Probably.
Yeah. So I took my pictures, I'm pretty sure, with that. And then I boned them out, took all the meat. And then I blew the front shoulders right out of it, though they were pretty mangled. They're not a big animal, So you hit them center of shoulder. I mean, both those shoulders are pretty mangled up. I mean, I took the meat that I could.
Yeah.
And then I loaded that whole sucker in my backpack and hiked back. And it was nice because there was no climbing because I camped up top, a couple miles back. So I got back to camp and I thought, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna throw out all my food, not the garbage part, but I just opened up all my food. Took all the salt that I had packed because I was going to treat the cape and stuff. My plan was if I got one, I just threw everything out that I could that was biodegradable like that. And I stuffed everything into my backpack and there was stuff hanging off it. And I packed that entire sheep and my camp out in one go. Yeah. And I was 18, so I was 155 pounds. And so this backpack was on, but
hell of a friggin'
So it was a hike. So thank goodness it was all downhill.
Yeah.
And it was about, it was about 6 hours, 5-6 hours to get out. Cause it took 4 hours to go in, to where I had my base camp set up. So normally coming out, you can do it in like 2.5, 3, right? But when you're loaded up, obviously you're way slower. So I think it took 6 to come out. And it's a relatively, not the hardest sheep trail. I mean, it's not really that bad for other stuff I've done. It's pretty easy, to be honest with you. But, I got back to the quad, I remember, and I like turned my back to the back rack of the quad and I kind of sat up and I flopped the weight of the backpack onto the back rack. So I had no weight on me and I took the straps off. And it was the first time, because when I took breaks, I just
took
leaned.
the actual pack
I never took it off. I just had my walking sticks and I turned and I leaned towards uphill and I stabbed the poles in the ground. And then I leaned my shoulders, in my delts, I leaned it right into the poles. That's how I take my breaks. I don't take the pack off because I have such a hard time to put it back on because I'm like, I don't want to do this, like I don't want to put that back. So I just don't take it off. But anyway, so I took the straps off and I walked away from the quad and I literally levitated to the point where like I think I was on the tips of my boot, because you take all that weight off, and it's like, you ever a kid and you like open up like a door, you know, so you're in a door frame and you push your arms on like over it as hard as you can for a full minute, and then you walk out of the door frame, your arms lift, even though you're not trying to, they lift.
Absolutely.
Well, that was the same effect my body had it, and I had quite a bit of weight on there, so I jumped on the quad. I quadded all the way out, got in my truck, and my legs are locking up on me bad, because it was about a 3.5 hour, 4 hour quad ride, I think. So I loaded the quad into the truck, threw the tailgate up, jumped in the truck, and I started driving home. And I mean, and now it's still only like 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, whatever it was, maybe 6:30 in the evening on opening day, and I'm already driving home with my Ram on.
Damn.
So I drive all the way back to Dawson, and it was however long. And I called from, you know, my little flip phone cell phone, and called mom and dad, tell them like I got a Ram, I'm on my way home, but like I think I hurt something. Like my legs are in a lot of pain right now. Like I think I need help to get out of my truck. And thank goodness I had enough fuel in that big diesel. I was able to drive, and I made it. Or maybe I stopped at like a full service and just had them fill it up for me. I don't know, gave them the card. I don't remember. Either way, I didn't get out the whole way back to Dawson, and I pulled in mom and dad's driveway, and I called them, and I'm just like, I can't get out of the truck. Like I'm cramped. Like I can't. And I had this 2006 Ram with like a 1 ton with like an 8-inch lift, 40-inch tires. This thing's way in the air. So my dad came out and he like helped me out of the truck. Like I couldn't make my legs straight. Like they'd cramped up into the position of the seat, and I couldn't get them straight. So I'm drinking water and trying to get
smokes.
some. Yeah. So my dad grabs a backpack, and he's just like, holy crap. So he throws on the scale, 118 pounds. And I'm 155.
Wow. Damn near your whole body weight.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And then so I laid on the couch, and I mean I couldn't. It took hours to get my legs completely straight, and you know, and like lay to go to sleep, and I'm, you know, mom's giving me Advil and all these things, and I slept there that night. I got up in the morning, and I couldn't. Then my legs were locked straight. I couldn't bend them.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was like, this is like, and I worked at it, and I'm like trying to like massage it. I'm like taking Advil, and I'm like, they are like, I'm barely able to move them. Like I'm barely able to, you know, to function enough just to get to the hospital, because I knew something was wrong. So I go into the hospital, like, you know, they wheel me in, you know, drive, you know, get on a wheelchair once I get to the hospital, and go in there, and just told them I overdid it and this and that. And yeah, I seen a doctor, and I tore an MCL in one leg or something like that, and an ACL in the other one.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Actually?
Oh yeah, I tore them. Wow. And then, so that they threw me they helped me into the hospital bed, and they gave me these muscle relaxants to help, you know, because they couldn't get me, you know, they put me on IV too. And
yeah, those muscle relaxants, I've had them. They're no joke.
No, you know what I did find out the hard way? So I'm sitting there, and I'm like taking these muscle relaxants, and it's like been like 45 minutes or whatever. And I like realized, I'm like, what's this? Warm, you know. Well, I pissed myself. I didn't even know.
Really?
I overdid her on the muscle relaxant. I'm like, oh, this is just like a nightmare, man. Like from the time I pulled the trigger, that's definitely where the
a hell of a
stopped.
story. Jeez.
But yeah,
well, there's a lot to be said for fitness, though, isn't there?
Buddy, yeah.
You ever do like a, you know, you're guiding, and there's a bit of a fitness requirement. Like,
dude,
I don't think people realize.
It's funny because, you know, in the beginning of the year, like I'm like my cardio, I feel like I work hard to get it in decent shape, but going into guiding season or hunting season to coming out, you're a completely different person, man. And I feel bad for the last couple clients I take of the year, because my cardio was on another level.
Yeah.
And
100%.
you know, we'll be like trying to like hike hard to get like a deer that's like way up this hillside, you know, we'll be like mountain mule deer hunting. And I like look behind me, and my client will be like, I, you know, kind of forget to keep, you know, it's only been a few minutes since I look back, and I look back, and he's like 400 yards behind me, just like red like a tomato. And I'm like, what's wrong? Like, I'm just getting warmed up, you know. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I've been grinding these.
No, you know,
months,
it's a big deal. Like, I don't think people realize
your body is a crazy beast, man.
But is there a bit of a requirement? Like, how do you filter through some of that stuff or deal with it?
I guided like sheep for a lot of years, and I try to like tell guys like and clients when they're coming, I'm like, you got to work your cardio first, and you should be doing this much walking, and like, you got to do something. And they're like, yeah, I'm really good. And they show up, and they're like, and they're not in good enough shape, you know.
Like
I've guided guys before, and they've lasted a half a day into their 7-day hunt or whatever, how many days they're coming for. And they're just like, I can't do it. I got to go back. And like, these guys are spending $40,000,
I don't even fully
man.
understand, what it would take for, I've never been on a sheep hunt, but I've hunted enough to where it's checked me a few times, and look where we live. And I've talked to a bunch of people who, say the same thing, but until you actually go, what I did to try and prepare even was, on the way to Tumbler Ridge, they've got a couple of valleys and stuff. And there was a nice gravel bar that I wanted to hike down to, and it looked like it was pretty easy. So I figured, well, we'll set up camp there. And I had a pack on, and I threw 80 pounds in it. And I mean, it was a hell of a freaking trek just to get down to this gravel bar. So I was probably 1.5 kilometers from the highway. It wasn't even all that, but it was a hell of a drop. And so we had to kind of traverse quite a ways. And that was what I was trying to do to get prepared for a hunt I wanted to go on. Yeah. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, this is actually no joke to be able to put the weight on a pack as such a completely different element. So the whole cardio end of things is one thing, but then having the ability to be able to manage weight and keep your balance and manage all of that at the same time.
Yeah, getting your cardio into shape is definitely important, and it's nothing to, I don't know what to take away from that, but getting your body used to the weight of the backpack is another, like you're saying, it's a whole nother element. I mean, you can't discount, the cardio, the need to have good cardio, but you need to get your backpack, the one you're gonna be taking on the hunt, you need to get it on and you need to use it and get used to it. But it's just like a pair of hiking boots. You can't buy a pair of hiking boots a week before the hunt and just strap them on when you go on a hunt. You're gonna blow your feet apart with blisters. Like, you need to know your feet need to learn the boot, they need to break in the boot, you need to work out the little calluses and all that stuff. And it is just like your backpack. You can't go and buy, you can't have like, oh yeah, I got a good backpack, and then you see one on sale at Cabela's and you're like, oh, look at that one, a week before season, go and buy that backpack. Wrong idea.
Well, not only that, but put it in there, like the things that I took for granted, I really didn't realize until you go on a bit of a hike, are the things that you reach for. So how do you pack your backpack? Because everything that you want typically is on the bottom. So you read and you're like, okay, we'll put the heavy stuff on bottom and have it on the hips and everything else. Yeah. But then when you go for a hike and you're managing that weight.
So I put you need to think about it more than anything, and then and go for little walks around the block or wherever you live.
Make your adjustments
and pack your backpack as close to what you're going to be in the mountains. Put all of your stuff in there if you can. Like your food, your water, like just do everything like you normally would. Because all those things are like they're not perishable anyway, right? So if you can pack your backpack exactly how it's going to be when you're in the mountains. And if that's, maybe, don't start out that much because that's going to be a little bit heavy, but just maybe take a couple things out of it, like the heavier items, like your sleeping bag, and then, or some of those bulkier, heavier things, and then put everything else in there and then get used to it, and get walking around, do that for a few weeks, and then start adding those other bulky, heavier items in that's going to be on your hunt. And then, so you work up to it. That's what I'm getting at, is you just want to, just throw 65 pounds in your backpack and then just start from zero, right?
But you want to work up to it for sure.
But yeah, so that's how I learned to pack my backpack for convenience, like you're asking too, is because when you're out for an hour long walk with your backpack, well, you're going to know in that walk, because you're going to get thirsty then too. And you're going to know, like, especially if you're out of town, then you can have your gun on you or whatever too. And you can be like, okay, well, if I come around the corner and if there was a black bear, like how would I, or a grizzly or whatever, right? Like, how would I grab my gun? What would I do? And then I put myself in that scenario. I'll be hiking and I think I'll have my gun in a good spot where I can get at it easy. And then I'll be like, okay, test time. Yeah. Boom. There's a grizzly. Now what are you going to do? And that's why I go to grab my gun real quick and I'm getting tangled up and I'm like, oh, okay, I need to not put that strap there. I need to put this here. Right. And it's just trial and error.
You're actually testing. Do you do that with your clients? Do you get them to kind of go through the motions?
I definitely ask them, depending on the hunt. If we're just hunting mule deer in November, that's not a big deal. No. But if we're mountain hunting and there's like grizzlies around, I'll be like, okay, so I'll go through scenarios, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I need you to do. Like, and how are you going to do it? And, they'll be like, okay, well, I'll take my gun off my back and I'll do this and and so I'll kind of talk through some scenarios and I'll ask them to show me how they're going to do it. But I don't get too crazy, like do drills with them, because there's like the real factor that happens. Like your mind goes blank. Yeah. A lot of guys, they freeze. I've been in situations where we've been charged by grizzlies and attacked, and it's like half the time, like my hunter that's with me, whether it's a friend or if it's a client, they freeze, man. They just, they go into shock. Like I'll be taking care of business, you know, thank goodness for both of us. And I'll look back and I mean, they'll just be like, just white knuckling their gun and like eyes as big as golf balls. And I mean, piss running down their leg. And I'm like, and we're talking like rough and tough dudes.
Well, it's no joke. I don't think people realize what a grizzly bear can do and how the experience and the feeling
in a short
and
period of time.
Oh,
yeah. Well, you've had what's his name on here?
I've had Robbie Austin and Jeremy Evans just recently. Jeremy Evans was a freaking story. I mean, if anyone's watching this and they're curious and you haven't seen the Jeremy Evans one, damn, that is a story like no other. I don't think there's too many people that have gone through what he has. That guy is
a beast.
Yeah.
And then Robbie Austin.
Austin. That's another hell of a man. What a crazy story that one was too.
And then did you ever podcast the other dudes?
Well, we don't want to mention names. I know who you're talking about, but there is one where I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about last summer.
So I was gonna say, so when the attack happened with Robbie, he was with his buddy.
Yes.
Right. And then his buddy also. Have you did a podcast with him? So he has a totally different side of it. Oh, so that's an intro.
That would be super cool to actually do. That's a good idea. Yeah. You know that?
Yeah, because Robbie has his version.
Yeah,
and it's not that it's a wrong. It's not that's not what happened, but it's what happened to him. And then you have his buddy's version that was like, this is what was happening through my, what happened to him, and what happened to Robbie in what I seen through my eyes. Right. So
you know what? That's actually, I'm surprised that I haven't done that yet. Yeah. Actually, to be honest with you, that would be
another really cool dude too. Big time cool dude. I think he's like a paramedic or something like that.
He is. Yeah. And that's what Robbie was talking about that. And I think that played a massive role in their ability to survive.
Yeah. Staying calm.
Yeah.
Right. In a situation like that. But yeah, no,
there's a few other I've been wanting to do. It's just, I mean, timing. There's just, I think, a few factors that a guy needs to make sure when you're dealing with something, like that. Story and an event, that crazy it's got to be done proper. Some people definitely aren't interested in, telling their story, or maybe, in time. There's another one.
Some people have, they've told their story and they get tired of telling the story too, right? It's kind of thing.
That's very true.
Like, I'd love to do a podcast with you and tell you about this, but I've told the story like 1,700 times. It's like,
Yeah.
And I've been there. I've been in some pretty wild adventures and attacks and near-death experiences, and sometimes some guys are like, tell me about your story in Kyrgyzstan with the ibex, and I'm like, I know you already kind of know the story through someone else. Like, I don't feel like telling it today. Like, it's just because it's a long story, and it's a gory one too, right? So it's just
there's that. Maybe we can do one another time.
Yeah, we'll do some hunting story.
Well over. Yeah.
What time is it anyway?
It's getting to the time where we should wrap it up.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I know it goes by quick.
I know. I knew when I was coming in, and I was like, okay, I'm half an hour late. Now I'm 45 minutes late, and I thought to myself, I was like, if we start right at 1, I don't even know how we're gonna get through it, because I know you probably want to touch on. I mean, I'm not like a jack of all trades, man. I'm like a half-ass at all the trades.
Yeah, exactly.
I try everything.
Well, I don't know all the stories, but I know there's some pretty wild stories that we could have definitely gone in. But it's not. Let's do it again.
Yeah, we can do one. We'll start off with we can do some crazies. We'll do the Kyrgyzstan ibex crazy stories and stuff like that. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. But
there's always, I think, another time. I think this one was a good one. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you came out.
Yeah, it was cool.
I know we've been talking about it for a while, so I'm going to just start harassing you tomorrow for next year.
Yeah. No, we'll do it again sooner. I'm around a little more now that I've moved back. I'm just kind of getting.
Are you getting back into it? You're back here. I know you travel. For the viewer who don't know you've been on some pretty cool trips and
I do a lot of
stuff
crazy
like that,
freelance guiding now. So I kind of the long short of it is, I did a lot of free range guiding for other outfitters around here, and then I decided to do something completely off the wall, which a lot of people are against. I bought a high fence hunting estate in Saskatchewan. Which essentially is you have an 8-foot fence, perimeter fence, and it on never much land so I was on quite a bit of land. I was on just over half section. It was all bush, and we had a natural whitetail herd on it, and that was like, that bred, and we hunted, and we also brought in more deer from raisers, from deer farms and stuff like that, and we did elk hunting as well on there, and they were all brought in from elk farms. So I mean, they weren't like wild, so to speak, but they weren't tame. It wasn't like you shook a grain pail like some people think and they came running. I mean, once they were on my place and we shot even just one, they like knew, they're like, this is not a good place. Like, this is the Green Mile. Like this is like, they see you, hear you, smell you, they're gone. I mean, I've had way easier hunts free range than on my ranch. But, so yeah, I did that for about 5 years, and I grew the business like crazy. I bought it as an existing business, and he used to do about like 20 hunts a year, 22 hunts a year. In my last year in business before I got bought out, I did 137 hunts in one fall. Wow. So we did the next two biggest ranches in Western Canada that did what I did. He put them together, and they still didn't quite do as much as I did. And there was the next two biggest. How did you
accomplish that?
And online marketing. I was spending $2,000 US a month on online marketing, and I would be booked out. I'd be booked out by March for that.
Really? Holy smokes.
For the whole fall. And then it got to the point where I was booking just about 2 years in advance. And then I just got like really well known. Like not me, I should say. The ranch got really well known, and I had a guy roll up to the ranch and he just wrote me a check, man. That was it. Retired.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
retired.
Like, yeah, just pulled. Boom. Yeah, so that was 3. That'll be 3 years.
And how old are you when you?
I was 34 then.
God,
I think.
Damn,
yeah.
Good job.
So yeah,
wow.
So where I was going with that is, so I didn't know what to do. I'm like, okay, well, we sold the ranch. I'd been, like, I had my residency in BC still, but I had my ranch in Saskatchewan, and I was kind of going back and forth. I was there for the falls mostly just to do the guiding, and then in the summertime doing some ranch work. And I was like, well, my wife, I'd met her in the meantime. Well, I owned the ranch. I'd met her, and she was from Red Deer and wasn't a hunter, and then just instantly turned into like a hunter. It was naturally in her, apparently. So she's like, well, what do you want to do? Where do you want to end up? I'm like, it's good hunting around Dawson where I grew up. I haven't been there. And I moved away like 8 years ago. And she's like, well, I'd try there, like I'm, that's where your family is, and it's good hunting. So we bought a place over here. It'll be about a year and a half ago. So this November, it'll be 2 years. We're just on the BC side, just outside of Dawson. And I get bored easy, so because I work still part-time a little bit here and there in the oil field. And I have all these clients that hunted with me, like repeat clients over 5 years that want to keep hunting with me. They really enjoy my stories, I guess, and like how I hunt, and they know that I used to be a free range guide. So now they're like, hey, can you take us on a moose hunt, or can you take us on a sheep hunt, or can you take us, and I'm like, yeah, like no problem. Like I know a lot of outfitters, so I'll call up an outfitter and be like, yeah, hey, like I got 3 guys that want to go moose hunting, and they want me to guide them. So how much, would you charge me to bring these guys? And I'll take care of all the logistics, all the gear. I'm just literally coming in as a freelance guide. They pretty well, they do all the legalities, the paperwork. It's their tag, it's their territory, and say, it's a moose hunt. He'll charge me, I don't know what, let's just say some numbers. Let's say charges me $5,000, per guy. So 15 grand. Well, I'll go to my guys and I'll say, okay, well, it's 20,000 US, per guy. So then I'll make my money that way or whatever. Right. And my clients aren't like stingy. I have a lot of clients that are really successful people, and they're good to hunt with. And I don't want to do this and stay really busy, because I am, trying to slow down and work less. So, I honestly only guide the ones that out of all the ones that want to hunt with me, the only ones that are not, cheap and not shitty company. So I'm in a good position that way. I can charge a good dollar and take a guy on a good hunt, and he's going to kill a big whatever we're after, because I'm good at what I do. I've always had a knack for it. We could have entered 4 animals in the Boone and Crockett last year out of everything we took. Yeah.
That's getting harder and harder.
It's to do, it's just every year it gets harder. But so that's kind of brings you up to speed with where I am now. That's what I do.
Welcome back. We're fucking stoked that you're back.
Country.
Isn't it weird how that happens?
It's something in the water. Like next week I've got some repeat clients. Next week we're leaving to South Africa. We're going to be there for just about a month.
Wow.
Big hunt, big budget, $150,000 a person budget, flying private over there direct. So
really,
I mean, it's
Haha, you cannot stop a smile.
Yeah,
That's good. You know, that's good for you. I mean, well earned, and I think hats off.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's
like that's a help. Why not?
It didn't come easy. Like I didn't come from money, and I didn't come from any advantages. It's just hard work, man. And we were talking about earlier. It's like finding what you're good at naturally at and work at it. And for me, my natural ability, one of my natural talents was being a hunter, and I recognize that, and I have educated myself, and I've spent a lot of time beating on my craft to become a better hunter. And I know a lot of really, really great guides, and I put myself up there with all of them, and I'm not like, I'm a humble person. I know some really good guides, and I'm like, I can guide, I can do what that guy does. And, and that's just what I do.
I love it.
It is what it is.
That's good.
I get the crap kicked out of me by most things, but
have you noticed though that the shift in the last little while with the hunting and the regulations?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I mean, moose and bear. I mean, we can go down a rabbit hole with all of that. Really,
I've said it from the beginning. Like, hunting isn't going to be around forever. With the way that the world is going, with the hurt feelings and the rights and in the moderation of things, like, hunting isn't going to be here forever. If it's here for another 15 years, I'd be surprised, to be honest with you. It's getting phased out because it's being looked at as like barbaric. It's crazy, because you think like 2 people ago in your family, if you weren't a hunter, you wouldn't be here. Because 2 people ago, it was hunting, fishing, trading. Yeah. That was all there was. Like, I think about it like that. Like, oh yeah, no, like, I'm not a hunter. That's barbaric. Like, well, guess what? If your great grandpa didn't hunt, you wouldn't even be here today. No, because that was the only way to survive. Like, it
isn't barbaric. But it's okay to have farming of any kind, and then you get the vegans and clear cutting for being able to grow, and then climate change. You take all those avocados and everything else, and you fly that across the world. I mean, it's just, I think,
people just have to understand that there's like a very simple term. It's called life eats life.
Yeah, it's true.
And that is the end of it. I'm sorry, but your soybean fields, like, you're devastating forest. You're killing natural habitat for all those deer, and you're killing all those insects and the moles and all those things that thrive in those fields when you're harvesting it. And that's okay to get your soybean.
Taking out ecosystems where the ground is cultivated and flat. And this is all monocrops too, which is not even all that natural. I mean, you're talking about, I think, a very destructive way of being able to produce.
All these herbicides and all these things on these crops to grow it, and then the little bit of deer that are left to go in there and they eat it, and then they get sick, and then they're not reproducing, and it's just, I'm sorry, but like, you cannot wash your hands of it.
No.
If you're alive, something has to die for you to remain alive. That is, life eats life. It doesn't matter how you cut it.
And that is true not only for people who eat meat, but then also, vegans and whatever else.
100%.
Those, I don't know all the different versions, but at the end of the day, people need food.
Yeah.
And whether an animal is dying in the wild or in a farm, or you're having to eat something that has been grown in a field,
something
for
got
it to be
sacrificed.
sustainable.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So either you're eating the deer that got sacrificed, or you're eating the soybean that the deer got sacrificed for, so they could grow the soybean.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, the deer ain't living, and you are.
Is there, when it comes to the management though on it, that is this something that you've seen, because you're talking about going down Africa and whatnot, but is this something that you've seen like sweeping across, all these different countries?
It is 100%. Yeah, no, it's not just Canada or the States, like North America. It's everywhere. I don't know it's not evolution, because to me that's an improper term, because evolution to me isn't a bad thing, and the whole like phasing out like the hunting and the fishing and all that stuff that's not a good thing, in my opinion. And I understand, like, not everyone can go and hunt moose. I mean, like, if you live in the middle of New York City, obviously you're not going to be a hunter, and you're going to have to get your meat from a market, and that's just, you can't have everyone in the exact same playing field. Everyone lives their own different lifestyle. But when you live in these parts like we do, where you're in remote and you're in the forest, and you can, are around forest, and you can hunt for yourself and put their own food on your table, then I think that if you can, then you should. I mean, and have the cattle farmers raising the cattle to sell the beef to the people that live in the cities and don't have the opportunity that we have that live in these rural areas to do the hunting.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
what does a guy do to be able to get involved a little bit when it comes to some of this stuff?
There's some organizations like there's like the BC Sheep Society is a big one. There's like all these, like, if you just Google it, there's lots of
just get involved in a society or something.
Yeah, there's lots of hunting, and then there's like the Safari Club International is another big one that is they're an international hunting group that you know, fights for conservation and fights for hunters' rights. And it's no different than like the gun control stuff, right? Like join one of the big groups. Like there's like the NRA, National Rifle Association.
That's the states,
Yeah,
but there is
States,
I think one that was in Dawson Creek, the Mountain Sheep Society.
Yeah,
they put a huge one on in Dawson Creek, and the nice thing about that is, even though they're multinational, the money that they raise stay within the region. The region, yeah.
Nice.
That they're huge.
No,
massive.
the Wild Sheep Association is definitely not just for sheep. A lot of
Wild Sheep Association.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to the Wild Sheep Association. They make people really aware. They have like a lot of what the word is, but they have like the connections or whatever. So I mean, if you get involved with the Wild Sheep Association, like they'll be bringing up topics like about like the moose hunt that they shut down up here and all the proposed things, and the grizzly hunt that they knocked down on. So yeah, I guess if you're listening to this and you're wondering if you want to get involved and wonder, you know, and educate yourself, like, yeah, don't look past Wild Sheep Association because you're not interested in sheep. It's like they're
no, they touch on a lot of things.
Conservation.
One of the things that they were showcasing, I guess, at this it was about a month and a half ago. They just had it in Dawson Creek at the Ovinus Center, and they had a really cool presentation on how they're doing controlled burns with the fireballs that they drop out of the helicopters, and they create, you know, burns that are controlled or within a certain area to be able to manage. I think certain areas and whatnot. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, they have. As long as it's unfortunate because there's some government red tape that gets involved, and that's the only thing that's really holding a lot of these associations back from making a bigger difference. Is there's people that control, you know, these decisions are made, unfortunately, out of like the big cities like Victoria and Vancouver, and they're like, oh, you can't, you know. A friend of mine, he was one of the managers for Fish and Wildlife and Forestries in BC, really, really high up there, and he used to do all the controlled burns down in the Okanagan. And then the wrong government got into power, and they had their own ideas about, like, this is crazy that you guys are just burning this forest. Like, you have to stop doing this, you know, and they're doing control burns in the right seasons and yada, yada. And this was like about 10 years ago or whatever. Well, now they call it the Smokanagan because, as you know, in the summertime, the Okanagan is on fire and it's out of control. And
No. That's climate change.
Yeah,
Jay, I don't know if you knew, but
and that's like my friend. My friend, he'll remain anonymous. He's just he's like, this is not going to stop until they allow us to do controlled burns down here again. And they just, it wasn't for sheep habitat. How like those guys are doing on a smaller scale, but it's the same idea. They used to do these really big control burns for forestry, obviously for habitat reasons, and because they just, you know, have old forest that needs to be burned, so you burn it in a controlled time in an environment and season, and it's all good. But now they're not doing that no more because they just see, you know, like the smoke and all, you know, we're melting the ozone layer, all these things, like these crazy guys in the cities have no idea what they're talking about because they don't know it. They just see it like from whatever, like their TV, or they have no life experience in it, I guess is what it comes down to. And they stopped doing those controlled burns down in southern BC, and this is the byproduct you get. It's not going to stop.
When you control a symptom, sometimes the root cause of that symptom turns into something that's not manageable. And I know they tried to use climate change for everything, and I don't think by saying that there isn't been an impact or a shift or anything is denying the fact that it's not an active contributor, but it isn't the one thing. Like, there's multifacets in approaches and understanding as to what's going on. You can't just write it off.
You can't write the forest fires off as it's only climate change, and you can't write them off as because we're only not doing controlled burns. It's the fact that there is climate change. Obviously, like, I mean, I've lived long enough to know that the climate is changing, and unfortunately there's not a lot that we can do about it other than, I mean, it's evolution. I mean,
there are cyclical patterns, that's a contributing factor. There is a human impact, which is a contributing factor. There is farming and a huge array of shifts in way, environment and things have been affected, which is a contributing factor. There's multifacets. It's not just any one thing that's causing, a huge end of the world shift in one direction or another. And I find it fascinating that, through climate change, we're trying to stop something from happening that has been, we're all in agreement, a cyclical pattern. And the fact that, maybe environment has changed no faster now due to humans might be a little inaccurate when you look at civilizations in history that have quite literally experienced, the sea levels rise and fall 1 foot. It's just, they never had permanent, cities right on the coastal lines. There's a reason why there's icebergs that are bloody 7 kilometers thick of freshwater ice. I mean, that's, and then the opposite of that too. I mean, did you go to that, have you ever seen that museum that they have at in Wembley?
I've driven by it like a billion times. I've never gone in there.
It's pretty wild.
Really
Anyone who's watching this should check it out. I got way more out of it than my kids even did. Or we went there with the grandkid, but the kids, it starts out with the dinosaurs. And so you walk in and it looks like a big iPad. And then they've got the skeletons of dinosaurs and whatever hanging from the ceiling. And you move the iPad and it recognizes the skeleton, and it animates it. So it puts everything, the flesh and everything on there, and it starts swimming around, and then you can, point it at different skeletons, and it shows you what that skeleton looks like, with real life.
Yeah.
So it starts out with that, and then it connects all those different skeletons to different Jurassic periods in time.
No way.
And then they've got a big, huge
really cool.
TV on the wall and a big ball on the bottom, and it shows you how all the continents shift. And then it shows you how in those dinosaurs lived at certain periods of time with the continent. And that time now has moved into present time, and Agate did a presentation or shows you how all those are all different formations.
Yeah.
And then now we're producing those formations. And at the end of it all, it ties it all in together where there's a wellhead there. So, I mean, it's not just specific dinosaurs, and it shows you, it brings in climate, it brings in like how this was all underneath water at one period of time.
Right.
And like, it's a pretty wild, I was like, man, I think I was way more impressed than anyone else. I was like, come on guys, why am I so excited here?
Yeah, I got to check that out. I didn't know I just thought it was a bunch of dinosaur bones.
No, it's pretty cool. It's a little pricey. I thought that if I was going to bitch, it would probably be the price, because we did it in probably an hour and a half, and it cost us, I forget what it was. It was 20 or 30 bucks. I mean, at the end of the day, it's worth it is all I got to say. Go check it out. And it supports, that money goes into so much more. Right? Well, yeah, it's local, and it supports a lot locally, like Tumbler Ridge and,
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out. It's good to know. I honestly just thought it was just a little museum full of a bunch of dinosaur bones and a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, well, so did I and it's built out of the pine beetle wood.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So you got all the really weird purple and green and black streaks through.
Do they still have like a little
beetle
restaurant in there too, or no?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I went, well, it's been a little while since I've been there. It's probably been about 5 years or so, but I mean, I can't see it changing a whole lot.
Yeah.
COVID. But we should, we should wrap it up. But it was awesome. I do appreciate you coming out. No, and I don't know. I mean, let's do this again.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll, I'll write down all the stories, all the hunting stories. I'll have a little pad of paper when I come here, and then be like, okay. And then you can advertise you can tell your podcasters to listen in, because when I come back on, that's going to be just, if you like hearing hunting stories, I'll hit you with
here's an idea.
Animal.
Why don't we do a little live as a preview? We can be like, okay, we're going to be talking about whatever, and we can get the viewers primed.
We'll be talking about, we'll go further into depth on the sheep hunt, how I slid off the mountain and rode them and fell off the cliff. And
there you go.
We can talk about some grizzly attacks, black bear attacks, cougar attacks, all personally on me.
Deadly. Wow. Cougars?
Yeah.
You survived a cougar.
Survived a cougar. Yeah. Yeah. Just outside Dawson Creek.
You're just leaving little teasers out.
Yeah. my line I got in South Africa, I got with my bow. I had 2 lines, full charge, 14 yards, got on video.
Wow.
Got him with my bow, no guns fired.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy
what else?
man.
There's been, Kyrgyzstan, held at gunpoint by the Kyrgyz military, shot at by the Chinese military.
Really? What were you doing down there?
Hunting.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What were you hunting for down there?
Ibex and Marco Polo.
Ibex.
Yeah, ibex have like a long, kind of a slender horn that tips way back, and they got little bumps on little.
Oh, it's like a sheep, or not a sheep? Sorry, a deer.
No, yeah, it's like a sheep. Like it's in the sheep family.
I should almost look. No, we can. We'll just leave. I could keep going here.
Yeah.
We'll leave her to her. No, thanks again.
Yeah,
and we'll wrap it up.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you help Kevin Unscripted grow by sharing the hell out of this episode and any other one that's out there. YouTube, Spotify. I guess one of the things is a lot of people don't know where to find this. So if you're watching it, I'm sure you found it. But let people know where to find it. Spotify and all the audio ones are on any kind of podcast platform that you'd find. And then YouTube is pretty much the only one I've got the video part.
The Spotify is awesome for me. Like I drive a lot. A lot of people drive a lot. This is the world we live in. I mean, you can, and Spotify is free. I mean, you can just get Spotify, look up Kevin Unscripted, and there'll be all the episodes there, and you can just throw it on while you're driving down the highway, take a road trip to Edmonton. You can, mix it up, put some music on, throw a podcast on.
I love it. I love what you're saying. You know what's kind of weird is that everyone wanted video, and my YouTube is just tiny. My audio downloads are just still way, way, way higher than anything close to what my video's doing. I don't understand where that need is. I think I got to figure it out.
I'm sure you'll get there.
One other thing that I'll let everybody know that I need to start advertising, and I'm glad to have someone to kind of bounce all of this on, is right now, as you've noticed, it's only just the one camera. But in a very short period of time here, I'm going to be bumping it up a little bit. And so we're going to have different angles. I'll probably have 3 or 4 different cameras. So it'll fill out everything a little bit and make it a little bit more engaging to watch instead of just kind of one little mono camera. But it's growing. We are kind of tackling it one camera at a time. And as long as I get people like you to talk to, man, holy cow, we've got her made.
Yeah, I got some people I can bring in too that you'll get they're a lot more entertaining than even I am. So.
Well, I don't know. The bar's been set pretty high. Like, look what we covered here today.
Yeah.
What was that? We talked about bodybuilding. We talked about MMA, martial arts. We talked a little bit about the hunting and everything in between. So
yeah, we'll make her nice and spicy next time. There'll be all kinds of attacks going on, some hunting stories. People love to hear, like, all my clients, like, I think the reason why they rebook with me is like 50% because I know what I'm doing. They always manage to get their animal, and their 50% is they just can't wait to hear the stories.
Yeah,
they'll get me primed up with booze, or just around the campfire, like, here, have another drink. Well, tell me about
we should do
how about Argentina? Have you been to Argentina, and what's all happened there? And I'm like, oh man, okay, what part? Central, Western, where are we at? And they're like,
really? Oh man, unreal.
Yeah, good times. Yeah, well, I'm heading to South Africa here next week, so when I come back, maybe I'll have some even more stories there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always getting more. It seems like it's just my life, man.
I'll have to talk to you about going on a hunting trip.
Yeah,
I would love to go on something. I got to get motivated. We're talking about goals. I need a goal. I need something to really kind of no joke mess around with, to be able to kind of kick things in. I mean, I should almost do something publicly, that?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay,
we could do the podcast mobile, like Joe Rogan and that Cameron Haynes, man. They do podcasts on the highway while they're like driving to go elk hunting. They'll have a little podcast on campfire. Oh yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. They go mobile. Oh, yeah.
Oh, shit. Well, hey, what Joe Rogan does, we must do too.
Yeah, that's right, eh? Talking about setting the bar high.
Well, I think a guy needs to be able to go public on a challenge. Because, that's the ultimate keeping you honest. That if you said, okay, by August I want to be down 20% or whatever, we'll have to figure something out.
I'm gonna be 200 pounds come September 1st for opening elk season, and I'm gonna do a hunt. I'm gonna hike from here to here, and I'm gonna get picked up 5 days later, and I'm gonna hunt hard in between. But then just take your phone along with you, do a little bit of selfie videos, and then we can do a podcast about it after.
Yeah. You know what? I just had an idea. If you're down in South Africa, why don't we do something like that? Why don't we do a little live? Why don't you just say, hey, let's do it doesn't have to be long. It could be 10, 15 minutes or whatever.
Yeah,
or 5.
Yeah, for sure.
How's it going down there, Jay? Oh, well, you're not going to believe this. Look at this shit.
Yeah. What do you want to see today? Yeah, there's going to be some stuff hitting the dirt down there, but it's all for a good cause. We'll go into that later about the hunting stuff. But yeah, there's they thrive off it. If there was no hunting, if there was no what's the word, like, yeah, international hunting and like visitation, like hunting like that, like in the guiding, like there wouldn't be an economy there at all. So
oh, really?
Yeah, we give back a ton down there. They thrive off of it. It's not like we just go down there and murder everything and then we just leave again. I mean, there's a lot of give back down there, so it's good to contribute to them. With the,
that would be good to kind of touch on as far as the game hunting and then how that's actually broke down.
I'd love to talk about that and explain the reason. And I'd love to be able to explain the importance of hunting and actually what it means to be a conservationist.
Yeah,
because without hunting and hunters, man, like that's
important. Yeah. Actually, we should actually make that a really big deal. Maybe do a little bit of it's unscripted, but I think within that unscripted part, we should touch on some of the more important things.
Yeah, we should touch on some hunting. Well, I'm going to tell a hunting story so we can talk about, the importance of conservation, and then it'll be good. I challenge any anti-hunter to have a debate and have a conversation with me, because I've never left that conversation and the other person still have the same mindset. So, and I got a couple buddies around here too, like even like that, like Greg Johnson. He's a really educated guy from Coeur d'Alene, one of the owners there too. He's a good guy to bring along.
Bring him out for sure.
He can answer to some conservation questions, and he's got some hunting stories too. He does some guiding as well, so he's a pretty cool dude. But he's also, like me, he's really busy. So to have both of our schedules line up and sit down here might be a miracle, but we get swing for it.
Well, I'm sure we can figure out something that's going to be enticing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll bribe him.
All right.
Cool.
Well, take care.
Right.
Take care, guys. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.
Yeah, over and out.
Over and out.